This is the story of a girl who surrendered her dignity for a promise. Dainaru accepts her fate in submission, her hands clasped tight. I will return here, she vows, offering herself up as property if it means protecting her people. Tears fell as the weight of the choice finally hit home. High above, a shadowy figure in a suit watches the fallout from his chair. With her resolve set, the Dark Elf chief turns her back on the life she once knew. The disgust was written all over her face as she faced the one holding her leash. Across from her, a grotesque pig creature in human clothes flashed a jagged grin. He leaned in with a sneer. I would like to propose another option. Before the chaos, she was the legendary tall and quiet raging maiden of the north. Her days were spent on the peaceful banks of the Sylvan River at the edge of the Elven Kingdom. She was a master of the wild, surviving off whatever the rushing waterfalls provided. As a proud member of the Dark Elf clan, her rifle was always loaded and ready. She patrolled the woods like a shadow, returning home with a fresh kill for the village. Her focus broke when a frantic voice called out for her. Sister, look at the village. The peace shattered as her life was replaced by an inferno. Thick black smoke chokes the sky, rising from the remains of what used to be her home. Everything she ever protected is burning to the ground. The horror of the scene hit her like a physical blow, leaving her frozen. She stood at the edge of the woods watching the flames devour her village in silence. What happened? She whispered, her reality shattering in an instant. Dainaru and her sister were on high alert, thinking bandits or maybe some orcs had finally tracked them down. The nightmare was actually much worse as an entire elven army rolled up and opened fire without warning. A hail of bullets tore through the air, cutting down civilians where they stood. Cavalry units charged through the smoke to slash anyone trying to escape. Dainaru could only watch as her people were slaughtered in the chaos. Nobody could understand why their own kind was suddenly treating them like the enemy. An officer calmly reloaded her revolver before pressing the cold barrel right against El's forehead. The truth was finally revealed with a cruel smirk. They were being purged simply for being dark elves. The village is a graveyard now. The elven army sweeps through the ruins, making sure there are no survivors left behind. Their officer barks out orders for the second squad to keep pushing forward. The officer orders her men to level the forest while they scream about how despicable the dark elves are. Soldiers start hacking away at the trees with axes to flush out any survivors. They are on a mission to kill everyone in sight. A sudden shot rings out and the officer's smug grin turns into a look of total shock. One of her soldiers hits the dirt before she even knows what hit them. Our girl Dainaru is finally back and she is bringing the smoke. She stares down the invaders with her rifle leveled, calling out the white elves for the scoundrels they are. Deep in the forest, the survivors are scrambling to regroup while tending to the wounded. The betrayal of their own kind is hitting them harder than the bullets. They can't believe they are being hunted like animals. Dainaru's sister looks up with tears in her eyes and asks what the plan is. She catches herself and addresses Dainaru as chief instead of sister. The weight of leadership is resting entirely on her shoulders now. Black smoke chokes the sky as the entire village goes up in flames. Dainaru stands in the shadows, feeling the heat of her home being reduced to ash. The enemy soldiers are nothing but silhouettes in the fire as she tries to block out the sight. Dainaru barks out the order to retreat into the woods. The mission is simple: save as many people as possible, even if it is just one soul. The trek is a nightmare through mountains and freezing rivers while survivors drop from exhaustion. They kept moving until their legs gave out. Dainaru finally hits her limit and collapses in the grass next to her rifle. Someone spots her from the shadows and can't believe their luck. She opens her eyes in a cozy bed, wondering how she did not end up as a corpse. This place definitely does not look like the village. The door swings open and a pig-faced girl in a maid outfit greets her with a wide grin. She is just hyped that her patient is finally conscious. Dainaru immediately goes into combat mode when she sees an orc in her room. This was not on the bingo card. The maid keeps it moving to go find a doctor while Dainaru sits there baffled. Apparently orcs are known for being loud bastards in this world. In her head, orcs are nothing but monsters. She sees them as a bottom-tier race ruled by primitive urges and hunger. This prejudice goes back over a century to a violent clash in Rosalind Valley. That war left a permanent mark on how she views their kind. A hand suddenly grabs her arm and pulls her focus back to reality. The unexpected contact has her nerves on edge. An orc doctor in a professional suit is actually checking her vitals. He notes her heart rate is through the roof, though that is basically expected given the shock she is in. The room around her is surprisingly clean and organized. Between the warm fireplace and the soft sheets, the environment is far more refined than any orc camp she has ever seen. A distinguished orc in a sharp suit introduces himself as Gustav Falkenhayn. He carries an air of authority and magical power that suggests he is someone of high status. Serious talk is being put on hold for a moment. He keeps things classy and suggests they start their meeting with a proper meal. Gustav really pulled out all the stops, serving up a 5-star recreation of her home cooking. We are talking reindeer stew, mushroom soup, and even spiced wine to keep her warm. Dainaru can hardly believe this gourmet feast was just thrown together. She actually drops her guard for a second to show some gratitude. One bite and she is hit with pure nostalgia. This kind of food is usually reserved for major festivals, but here she is eating like royalty in an orc guest room. The comfort of the meal is short-lived as the trauma of the purge comes flooding back. Even in this luxury, she is still haunted by the faces of those who did not make it. She heads over to see the rest of her people and the room erupts. Everyone is shocked to see their chief is actually alive and back on her feet. The reunion is a total tearjerker, but the math is not mathing. Only 14 people made it out of the original 30, and the survivors are terrified they are just being fattened up for slaughter. Daineru puts on her big sister face and promises to handle the situation. She is going to talk to the head orc herself to secure their safety once and for all. Gustav leans back and lets the weight of the situation sink in. He acknowledges the tragedy of her village, calling the massacre a true case of ethnic cleansing. Daineru mulls over the new term, finding it a perfect match for the nightmare she lived through. She has never heard it before, but it fits the situation perfectly. The steam from her coffee fills the silence as Gustav shifts the conversation. He asks our MC what she actually plans to do moving forward. Daineru does not hesitate for a single second. She plans to head back to the village to take down the White Elves, even if she has to do it all alone. She knows she has no right to ask for a favor, but her people come first. She requests weapons and medicine, asking Gustav to look after the survivors who cannot fight. Daineru is prepared to sacrifice everything to save her clan. She tells the orc leader he can eat her, or even use her as breeding stock as long as her people are safe. Gustav stares her down, seeing that she is dead serious about her resolve. If she is really that prepared, he has another option he wants to propose to her. Gustav makes his pitch. He suggests she and her survivors move to Orcison, the kingdom of orcs and demons. Daineru asks for his motive, and Gustav prepares to explain himself while they look out at the snow. Fast forward a month and a half. The scene shifts to the freezing mountain borders where orc patrols keep watch. The evacuation is in full swing. Orc soldiers lead the survivors to warm campfires and distribute hot soup. It is a grueling night. While the children finally get to eat, more refugees struggle through the icy river. An orc officer offers her some fire sake to keep the chill away. He jokes about whether an elf can even handle a drink that strong. She downs the whole thing without flinching. Her decision is made. She accepted the king's proposal. She offers a word of thanks as the operation kicks off. There is no time to waste, and the group immediately plunges into the dark. They cross the Sylvan River once more as the rescue effort intensifies. Rescuing their people is the only thing that matters now. Communication is a mess in the middle of a war zone, but they manage to ping their kin. The mission shifts to a high-stakes escort to the border. Magic allows them to coordinate their retreat in silence. Our MC takes the most dangerous spot at the rear, keeping the White Elves busy while everyone else flees. With the goal in sight, everyone pushes for the south bank. Orcison is the only sanctuary they have left. The weather clears just in time to ford the river. This is their best shot to make it across before the enemy catches up. Orc patrols are waiting on the other side to pull the final group to safety. The rescue operation is finally reaching its end. The orc patrol watches as the last survivors scramble through the dark river. The officer catches a glimpse of the raw intensity in their eyes as they push through the current. Their faces are smeared with dirt and sweat, and their shaking hands grip the necklaces of those they've lost. The only keepsakes left to remind them why they have to keep moving. The freezing air bites at Daineru lungs. Just as her strength starts to slip away, a voice rings out through the night calling her name. Our girl finally gives out, but she does not hit the dirt. King Gust catches her mid-fall and pulls her into a protective carry. She looks up at the king with heavy eyes. He tells her to stop talking and just rest, praising her for making it back alive. Even while being rushed to safety, her only concern is the tribe. She desperately asks the king how many of her people they actually managed to save. The reality is a crushing blow. Out of 70,000 people, only 12,000 are left to see the morning. The orc leader leans in with a look of genuine regret. He wishes he had noticed their struggle sooner while Daineru rests in his arms. A firm grip of gratitude. The survivors share a meal and thank their lucky stars for this second chance at life. Daineru looks up at her savior with a weak smile. She tells him that her life officially belongs to him now, just like she promised. The king looks down at her as she visibly softens. He declares that from this point on, they are all his brethren. He stands tall and gives a formal salute. It is a sign of ultimate respect for the loyalty they have shown. Kneeling down, the king makes a solemn vow. He promises to repay their devotion with everything he has. The narrative finally introduces the man of the hour. Gustav Falkenhayn, the legendary Orcusan king better known as the Demon King, was bracing for a clash that would define their history. The orcs were acting on pure hunger and savagery. They charged forward like a tidal wave, ignoring every tactical disadvantage. Wait for it. With thousands of enemies flooding the valley floor, the commander holds the line until they are close enough to make every shot count. At 50 paces, the order finally drops. The entire front line opens fire at once, turning the valley into a storm of lead and smoke. Fast forward to the present day where a powerful steam engine is chugging through the countryside. This is a major shift from the grim battlefields of the past. Inside the train, the group is finally getting a chance to relax. The survivors are glued to the windows as the scenery flies by. Endless wheat fields stretch as far as the eye can see. One survivor is already dreaming of white bread while another is more concerned about the soil quality, and Daineru silently watches the scene unfold. Daineru suddenly stands up, catching her sister off guard. The younger girl looks on with a mix of confusion and concern, wondering what just caught the chief's attention. The train continues its journey deep into the Orc Kingdom, leaving the familiar borders far behind. They are now 250 kilometers into the heart of a domain that was once considered a place of nightmare. Her sister stares out the window with her mouth hanging open. She can't believe she is finally seeing the legendary city of the orcs with her own eyes. The view is breathtaking. A massive stone metropolis stretches as far as they can see, featuring advanced trams and towering buildings that look nothing like their forest villages. Welcome to Wildschwein, the thriving capital city of the Orc Kingdom. Above the busy streets, massive eagles soar through the air as the city's natural guardians. The sheer scale of the architecture is enough to make anyone feel small. One of the survivors notes that they have never seen buildings this huge, while Daineru silently takes in the sight of their new home. It turns out the city is far more diverse than they expected. Kobolds, dwarves, and even members of the giant wolf tribe walk the streets together in peace. Seeing the flags of human nations flying high makes it clear just how connected this place is. Our girl Daineru realized that even their own capital looks like a tiny village compared to this metropolis. The group is left speechless as they arrive at their new home in the suburbs. A refined orc official is already there to welcome them, proving the king really kept his word about taking care of his new citizens. This new neighborhood has everything from cozy houses to open fields with livestock. The girls are practically glowing with excitement as they run through the grass. Inside the houses, it is even better. One of the girls immediately tests out the bed, while another finds a high-tech toilet that looks way too advanced for their forest lifestyle. Even if they are not used to fancy plumbing, they cannot help but be impressed by the latest models. Heading back outside, they run into a local worker who seems just as curious about them. Later, the chiefs take a trip to see the industrial side of the kingdom at the Dwarf Iron Works. Clad in sharp new uniforms, they stand before a massive facility that is constantly pumping out smoke. The scale of their military production is on another level. Rows of cannons fill the warehouse, showing that the orcs are ready for any threat that comes their way. Rows of cannons made from rare Morium steel are a shock. This stuff is so precious to elves that they only get a single knife made of it when they come of age. Looking at the industrial skyline, it is hard not to respect the scale of dwarven production. Admitting how far ahead they are is definitely a bit frustrating. Agriculture is the next stop on the tour. Life in the mountains meant surviving on simple grains like oats and rye since the rocky soil was not great for crops. Their old survival strategy relied on the classic three-field system, rotating between winter and summer crops while letting land rest. It was a tough life of just trying to get by on poor land. Farming on this level is something they have never even imagined. Seeing powerful horses effortlessly plowing through the fields changes everything they thought they knew. An orc agricultural scientist steps up to explain the local methods. He is clearly a pro who knows exactly how to make this land thrive. The plan involves a strict rotation of wheat and rye for the different seasons. For the space in between, he recommends packing in some turnips or potatoes to maximize the yield. The girls are living for the food options. Using asparagus to fix rich soil is a pro move they never expected. This advanced technique is called ring cultivation agriculture. Turns out the king is a total genius when it comes to farming too. The soil here is basically liquid gold. Daineru is stunned that they can farm this land forever without wearing it out. Nothing beats the smell of fresh white bread. The girls are already forgetting their past trauma as they dive into the local cuisine. The teasing is real as they bring up how terrified she used to be. She really thought this bread was her last meal before everything went south. Lunch is a vibe, but Daineru is still on high alert. She notices a weird detail about the service that seems way too fancy for a casual meal. Using literal magic just to keep butter cold is the ultimate flex. The elves can't believe this kingdom uses high-level spells for everyday chores. The youth seem to be adjusting well to their new status. These military uniforms are a major upgrade, and they're already making themselves at home while enjoying some snacks. Orc technology is surprisingly advanced when it comes to the kitchen. This engraving magic is their secret to keeping massive shipments of food perfectly fresh during transport. Seeing a kingdom run on such high-level logistics is almost overwhelming. Daineru can only shake her head at what she sees as a culture defined by an obsession with gluttony. The conversation comes to a halt as she catches a glimpse of something outside. A lonely figure is standing perfectly still in the middle of a vast snowy field. The worker leans on his tool while declaring that food is the foundation of everything. Daineru narrows her eyes, wondering if this mysterious man is actually the king himself. The scene shifts to a sunny park in early March. A high-ranking orc tipping his hat introduces his massive white wolf, Advin, as the one who first rescued Daineru. Clad in her own military gear, Daineru offers a formal salute of thanks. Despite the hospitality, she questions if everyone is being a little too careless with their safety. Daineru looks back on the dark history between elves and the giant wolf tribe. Knowing her people once hunted the species that saved her life makes the guilt hit hard. Music begins to drift through the air just as the clock hits 9 in the morning. Gustav watches the city wake up from a distance. Stalls are packed tight for the weekend market. The energy here is high as everyone gets an early start on their weekend shopping. Trays of fresh produce and rows of meat line the busy street. A group of humans with a camera freezes in shock the moment they spot an elf in the crowd. This weekend tradition takes place right outside the palace walls. Daineru stays quiet while she adjusts to how open and relaxed this kingdom really is. Gustav starts waving to people like he is just a regular guy. Daineru worries about his lack of security while a child nearby watches them pass. Recognition spreads fast as a child points out the king to the crowd. Cheers erupt from the stalls as the group continues their stroll through the market. Gustav takes a casual stroll through the market while his people cheer for him. A simple nod of approval is all he gives as he passes through the crowd. He stops at a stall to admire some fresh strawberries. The seller is honored and offers the fruit to his ruler. Our boy decides to grab some for breakfast and pulls out his wallet. Daineru watches from behind, looking stunned by the normal interaction. She can hardly believe her eyes as a powerful king stands there counting out pennies. This level of modesty is something she never expected from royalty. Pretty soon, the king is lugging around a mountain of groceries himself. He refuses to let her help, insisting that she should find something she likes as well. It is time to head back for the morning meal. An invitation to breakfast follows, with him noting that berries are a favorite treat for her people. Back at the table, the vibe is surprisingly peaceful. Daineru wipes her mouth while asking if life here's always this laid back. Gustav explains that keeping a relaxed vibe is perfectly fine as long as it is done behind closed doors. This king is proving to be way kinder than Daineru first expected. He suddenly shifts the conversation back to business and asks for an update on the cavalry training. Even the dark elf girls are finding it a total hassle to deal with the horses. It does not help that the orcs are too massive for the animals and keep falling off their saddles. Daineru reminds him that he was the one who practically begged her people to help build a real cavalry. The two of them can finally find some humor in the desperate start of their partnership. She is officially asking for help in building up the specialized Dark Elf Brigade. Her sleek, all-black uniform shows that she is ready to lead the charge as their new officer. The grand vision includes multiple regiments of cavalry, mountain rangers, and full artillery support. Once the supply lines and medical units are added, they will have 8,000 troops ready for wartime. He wants this specialized combat team to act as a small, highly mobile division. This level of planning proves that the king has a sharp mind for tactical warfare. Rumor has it our boy grabbed the crown right after the Battle of Rosalind. He really built this whole country from the ground up. Over a century later, he turned this place into a powerhouse. This city is a glowing example of what happens when you actually know how to lead. Daineru thinks the king is on a whole different level of genius. Her fangirling is quickly interrupted by a giant plate of strawberry crepes. She is definitely feeling the sugar rush right now. Apparently the royal chef is a god in the kitchen. She starts to realize that even a king has his own set of quirks. Turns out this legendary leader is just as human as the rest of them. The man is surprisingly chill and spends half his time vibing in a massive library. He is basically the ultimate bookworm with a crown. He can talk your ear off with long speeches, but his smooth voice keeps everyone from falling asleep. Plus, the dude is a certified gourmet who can crush some donuts like a pro. This guy is a chimney who cannot put the pipe down. He clearly prefers the old-school way of smoking while keeping up with the daily news. Watching his thick fingers pack a pipe with such care is actually kind of charming. Daineru takes a puff of her own while considering what his real flaws might be. Our boy is the bachelor who rejects every single lady his aides throw at him. He has stayed single without a single scandal to his name, which is unheard of for royalty. This level of self-control is impossible to believe coming from an orc. Daineru can hardly wrap her head around how clean his track record is. He explains that being king is not about who your parents are. In his world, the strongest magic user gets the crown, and that is how he landed the top spot. Most demons are effectively immortal unless they get sick or injured because they live forever. The birth rate in their kingdom is incredibly low. The Dark Elf tribe is an all-girl squad that has no idea where they actually come from. They just discover new babies waiting for them under the trees of their home village. The massive population of orcs is not because they are super fertile, but because they are built like tanks and just refuse to die. In their world, a single birth every decade is treated like a national holiday. Daineru casually drops a bomb at the breakfast table and asks Gustav if he is into guys. He immediately shuts it down but keeps it respectful, saying he is not one to judge what other people do in their free time. She starts to realize he is not interested in other races either, which makes her previous offer of her own body feel a bit awkward. Even though she pledged herself to him, he seems perfectly content just reading his morning paper. Since joining up, he has not laid a single finger on her. Instead, she is treated as a top-tier citizen, and realizes he only accepted her out of pure loyalty to the cause. The more she thinks about it, the weirder it gets. She is practically vibrating with confusion over his total self-control. Historically, orcs were known for being honest about their primal instincts, with zero boundaries when it came to food or pleasure. Back in the day, they would even snack on other races if the hunger got bad enough. Gustav basically fixed the kingdom by banning those wild urges and replacing them with high-quality pig food. This shift in lifestyle is what actually gave birth to the modern orcsin. She is completely losing it trying to figure out how he ignores his basic urges. He just sits there with his pipe and paper like it is nothing. While every other orc is busy catching some mandatory Z's, our king is wide awake. He spends his time reading or chatting without breaking a sweat. Staring him down, she drops the million-dollar question. Are you really an orc? He stays cool and just asks if she is finally heading out, cap on and ready for duty. We were saved from extinction by that orc king. Setting up shop is the next priority. First, let's establish our position in this country. Even if the white silver tree takes forever to grow, they finally have a foundation. Gustav drops a massive truth bomb predicting an inevitable war between Elfind and their own country. This is not just any skirmish, he's talking about a total war of nations that will change everything. Stunned by the scale of his vision, Daineru needs a second to process and asks for a smoke break. Gustav is totally chill about it, pulling out his own pipe to join her. He is not done yet. Even if they crush the White Elves, he warns that the next boss fight is a war against the entire human race. He admits he had not planned on revealing this much so soon, but the vibe is already too real. The age of magic is fading fast, replaced by iron ships, railroads, and pure firepower. To survive this shift, he believes they have to unite every race under one banner before the world leaves them behind. It is a survival move. Uniting the nations is the only way he sees to dodge a straight-up extinction war with the humans. Exhaling a cloud of smoke, she admits she is genuinely blindsided by his level of foresight. She looks at this orc king, wondering how he can see the future so clearly. It is almost like he is thinking several steps ahead of any elf or human she has ever met. She finally sees the massive scale of his plan. Gustav is offering her clan a home, the tools to fight, and a real shot at winning. There is no hesitation left in her eyes. She accepts the Orc King's proposal right then and there. Gustav reaches out a hand to seal the deal. He officially welcomes Chief Daineru and her people into his kingdom. Fast forward to the second week of March, year 76. The crew has relocated to the Walderberg training grounds to start their military prep. Surveying the busy field, Daineru looks a bit surprised by the activity. She asks if this is all part of a larger drill. A pig officer snaps a sharp salute to greet her. He mentions there is an opportunity to watch some joint exercises nearby and wonders if she is interested. Meet Lieutenant Colonel Muffling, a key member of the king's residence staff. He lets her know that Gustav personally sent a message specifically for her. Daineru snaps a sharp salute and accepts the king's summons with absolute respect. Telling the colonel she will be there, her face shows she is ready for whatever comes next. As soon as the officer turns his back, Daineru's sister Rhea starts clowning on him for looking pitiful. Disrespect is not tolerated, so Daineru shuts her down immediately. After telling Rhea to keep her thoughts to herself, Daineru orders the chiefs to gear up for a field trip. Under the light of 3 moons, the squad moves out during the early hours of the morning. The whole crew is rolling out on horseback, looking like a real military force. Leading the way is Lavarasu, who is finally coming into his own as the new chief of staff. The cavalry regiments are led by elite officers. Command of the 1st Regiment goes to Arwen, while Artis handles the 2nd, both looking locked in for the mission. Keeping the formation tight, Eleanor leads the 3rd Cavalry Regiment with a focused glare. Precision is the name of the game for Elenway, as she commands the Mountain Rangers. Major Frida brings the heavy firepower as the head of the Artillery Battalion. This is a full display of the Dark Elf Brigade's military power, and they are not here to play. Meet the squad leaders, Operations Officer Leilnor and Logistics Officer Rhea. Though Rhea seems more interested in catching some Z's than the mission. The unit pulls up to the capital training grounds way ahead of schedule, passing the perimeter guards as they enter the facility. Daineru is blown away by the scale of the base. After trekking through the fields, the squad crosses the railway tracks while the local orc troops show their respect with a salute. They reach the command tents of the Exercise Control Department. An officer welcomes the Major General to the referee station where all the training matches are judged. The officer drops a friendly warning to be on their best behavior. Apparently, the legendary Old Man Zebek is actually sober today, which is basically a rare event. This is General Karl Hemmet Zebek, the chief of staff for the Orkson National Army and a heavy hitter in the military. Daenerys recognizes him as the king's close aide from the mountain villa. She hits him with a respectful salute and a warm greeting, glad to see a familiar face in a position of power. Zebek is a whole vibe when the wine starts flowing. Turns out the stiff general is actually pretty chill once he gets a few glasses of Western Orkson red in him. Daenerys scans the room and notices every officer is rocking a green armband. She spots the operation map covered up, realizing this exercise is much more formal than she expected. The heavy hitters start showing up, including Major General Eric Greven of the Operations Bureau. Right next to him is Jirim Kaito, the man who runs the entire logistics department. Communications Chief Helmut Staupit joins the group with a sharp, focused glare. Geography expert Karl Rotenberger pulls up with his pipe, looking like he owns the place. Seeing the entire general staff in one spot is a total shock for Daenerys. This location is nicknamed the Hill of Generals because the military's top brains moved in for the day. The Orc military system is pretty unique compared to other countries. Their general staff builds the strategy and sends a direct proposal straight to the king for the final call. This doctrine was born from studying the human heroes who invaded during the war 6 years ago. Now they have a massive command center that stands as grand as the royal palace itself. The Orkson army really thinks of everything. They even train their troops to climb ropes so they do not get caught in the brush while moving through the forest. A giant shadow sweeps across the field as a majestic eagle glides into the camp. A ground crew guides the beast to a precise landing right in the center of the staging area. One of the generals checks in with the eagle to get a quick update on the weather conditions. It is a perfect spring morning, and the forecast is looking clear for the upcoming military drills. Meet Werner Reinders, the high-ranking commander of the Eagle Legion and the son of a powerful clan leader. He is a key figure in the National Air Force and commands some serious respect on the battlefield. Daenerys realizes she is talking to a major general and tries to make up for the mistake. She hits him with a respectful greeting while apologizing for being so clueless about his rank. The eagle stares her down and drops the news that they have actually crossed paths before. He says there's a lot to catch up on, but the mission comes first, so they have to keep it professional for now. The high command thinks the whole situation is hilarious. They are getting a kick out of Daenerys' struggle, and someone even cracks a joke about her finally getting what she deserves. The eagle definitely rings a bell for Daenerys. It is time for a trip down memory lane as the pieces finally start to click. Back in the day, the elven government treated magical beasts like straight-up pests. Hunting down wolves and eagles was basically a side hustle for anyone looking to make some bank. While everyone else was out for blood, Daenerys saw the beauty in these creatures. She knew there was more to them than just being a target. One specific hunt changed everything for her when she finally crossed paths with him. This was the moment she realized these eagles were actually intelligent and could speak. Instead of taking the shot, she warned him to fly away while he still had the chance. It turns out she actually saved his life that day. The dots are finally connecting regarding the commander she just met. The guilt of her race is hitting pretty hard right now. Realizing her people were once his biggest threat makes this reunion feel heavy. Daenerys explains she only acted cold before to keep her status as a commander, but she is actually incredibly grateful. The eagle keeps it humble and offers a sincere apology of his own. Finding out he really survived that day is a massive weight off her shoulders. She finally connects the dots to the great eagle she once saved and gets emotional about the reunion. He says he was just an inexperienced bird back then, though Daenerys thinks he was still pretty impressive. Meeting him now as a high-ranking officer is an honor she never saw coming. They catch up on how he went from a target to the head of aerial reconnaissance and weather tracking. Daenerys is clearly impressed by how much he has achieved in the kingdom's military. The eagle knows the history between their races is messy, so he offers her a token to smooth things over with his flock. He wants the other birds to see her as an ally they can finally trust. She accepts a single feather and tucks it right into her cap. The nearby general watches the exchange with a satisfied smirk, happy to see the different divisions finally playing nice. The heartfelt moment is cut short as a rider comes charging into the base. Everyone snaps to attention because King Gustav has finally arrived to check on the troops. But it's a old friends reunion. Schwerin and Zabek are getting hyped and locking in for a hug while Daenerys watches from the sidelines. Introducing the legend himself, Schwerin Aloysius. He is the commander of the Northern Army, and he just touched down to join the party. The whole squad is saluting like it is a major reunion. Everyone is feeling the nostalgia of those old days. This dude was a beast back in the day. He led the charge at a major battle over a century ago and was known for taking on anyone in a one-on-one fight. Daenerys is stunned that these veterans are still around. Zabek and Schwerin are trading bars about who is the oldest guy still breathing. War was a totally different game back then. They were running around with flintlock rifles and bayonets while Daenerys was already facing them on the battlefield. Schwerin turns his focus to our elven chief. He has heard her story and gives her some respect for surviving such a tough journey. This dude is actually a major general and the boss of the 17th Mountain Rifle Division. He He was one of the ones who made sure everyone escaped safely during the evacuation. He laughs off the formal title, asking if he looks like some kind of bandit leader. The room stays lighthearted as he jokes about his own reputation. Daineru is suddenly hit with a realization when she looks at the map. Back in the day, it was the Northern Army that was directly facing off against her own people in Elfland. She approaches the Major General with a bit of hesitation. She asks if he has a moment of free time to chat about the past. He practically jumps out of his skin with excitement, begging her to explain how his side lost the Battle of Rosalind Valley. This guy has literally been losing sleep over that tactical defeat for over a century. Our girl can only give a stunned, awkward laugh at his intense energy. She agrees to help him out, making the rest of the squad hype up the moment. As things settle, she turns her attention toward the other two leaders in the room. In the military world, real combat experience usually carries way more weight than just a high rank. She starts analyzing the other two generals and realizes their history is surprisingly empty when it comes to actual battlefield action. Daineru is losing her mind over the logistics. The Northern Army just covered 250 clicks since yesterday, which is basically impossible. Down in the camp, commanders Glostal and Mantefel are sealing the deal with a handshake. They keep it professional while greeting each other. Glostal even asks the other guy to take it easy on him during the exercise. Watching the troops march, the answer finally clicks for her. It wasn't magic or some crazy stamina. They just loaded the whole army onto a train. This is peak logistics. 18,000 soldiers and hundreds of horses moving across 250 kilometers in just 2 days by rail. Our girl is catching a migraine, realizing how cracked this is. No other country has a setup that can move an entire military division this fast. She can't believe she didn't realize it sooner. Her own people took the same rails to the capital without even having to switch cars. The real source of power finally comes into focus. This entire operation is run by a permanent giant machine known as the General Staff. Daineru stands back and watches the king's top aides finally putting the pieces together. It's not just that the country moves the military, but the military that's actually moving the country. The realization hits hard as she stares forward. In this place, the army is the foundation of everything. A quiet morning over the command tents, she's devastated to realize just how much she still has left to learn about this kingdom. Inside the main tent, the room is packed with officers as the clock hits 9:50. It's time to start the official briefing for the day's exercise. The general makes it clear that everything from here on out is a top-secret military matter. The mood shifts instantly as everyone locks in, knowing the conversation is strictly off the record. When the map is finally revealed, it's not what Daineru expected at all. They aren't looking at a local training ground, but a full-scale map of the Balerian Peninsula. The general dives into the details of Operational Plan Number 6. This isn't just practice, it's a massive experiment in railway mobility and the latest in military tactics. The common soldiers are out here marching for a drill without a single clue why this exercise is happening. Meanwhile, the commanders are finally opening the books on the real target for Plan Number 6. The atmosphere in the tent turns ice cold as the general pulls up the files for an operation against the Elfin nation. He casually mentions that 70,000 people have been wiped off the map like it is just a minor clerical error. Since so many potential enemies are gone, he says they have to rewrite their strategy from the ground up. He talks about mass death as if he is just fixing a typo in a report. Daineru is frozen in place as she stares at those numbers on the board. It is a heavy gut punch to hear the slaughter of her own people being treated as a simple update to military logistics. The command goes out and the deadline is set for 1 in the morning. The entire operation is officially scheduled to kick off under the cover of night. Later that night, the chief of staff finds our girl standing alone outside the tents. Processing the terrifying level of organization she just witnessed is taking everything she has got. Leaning into the lens, he gives it a name, calling it Kriegsspiel. This is the art of fighting a war on paper before the first soldier even takes a step. Conducting war on paper keeps costs down and keeps prying eyes away from their actual troop movements. Daineru admits the news caught her off guard, but she senses a much deeper motive behind the king's explanation. She realizes the plan to take down Elfind was years in the making, and her people were always part of the math. Gustav gives her a blunt confirmation. He offers her a chance to quit and walk away if she cannot handle being a part of his cold calculations. The two of them stand in silence as the weight of the choice hangs in the air. Our girl just grins and tells him not to underestimate her with such arrogance. She is not about to be discouraged by a little long-term planning. It is only natural for a country to prepare for war against its biggest rival. To her, not being considered a threat worth planning for would be the real insult. She challenges him, claiming his deep preparation is actually the ultimate sign of respect for her people. She points toward the horizon, asking what it is he is truly trying to test here. The officers are watching the show from the sidelines, whispering about what the big bosses are even discussing. One of them just laughs, wondering if the leaders realize how they look to everyone else. Daineru lets out a frustrated huff and tells the king that his humble act is actually starting to feel insulting. Caught off guard, the Demon King just sweats and drops a quick apology to smooth things over. A small giggle escapes her as she imagines the victory waiting for them on the horizon. That confident smirk is a clear sign she is already mentally 5 steps ahead. She tells him straight up that he is being way too nice for a ruler. In her eyes, a king needs to be more arrogant and commanding so his people have someone strong to follow. Looking at him now, she finally understands his real game plan. He did not just rescue her people from a massacre, he gave them the weapons and the pride to stand on their own. The holy reputation white elves have across the human nations is about to be shattered. Their presence alone is enough to blow away those old myths for good. Even after offering them a way out, the king asks if they are truly ready to descend into the chaos of war. He wants to know if they have the stomach for the path he is laying out. Our girl leans in with a feral grin, asking him what this is really about. This path of war is exactly what her people have been itching for. Clad in her dark elf officer gear, she wonders if the upcoming military exercise will have its own set of surprises. She is ready to see what else the king has planned for them. Gustav gives her a stone-cold guarantee, declaring that their combined strength is enough to end Elfind in a single strike. He addresses her as Major General, sealing her new rank in their shared destiny. The military exercise has been running for an hour, and things are finally heating up. From their command post, the Dark Elf Scouts are keeping a sharp eye on the 1st Scout Grenadier Division. Our squad is locked in, watching every move the defense units make. The scenario is set with the Red Army holding the line while the Blue Army brings the heat. Orc soldiers are already on the move, pushing forward to kick off this multi-day drill. This is the real test to see if their modern tactics actually hold up in the field. Lavarasu keeps her eyes glued to the horizon, not wanting to miss a single detail. The fuse for this operation has officially been lit, and there is no turning back now. Blue Army troops are swarming the field, showing off some seriously clean coordination. Whether they are charging with sabers or digging in for cover, these boys are not playing around. It is a non-stop show of force as the infantry units spread out across the terrain. Lieutenant Colonel Lavarasu Annerlind is leading the charge as Chief of Staff, and she is impressed. She notes that the 1st Grenadier Division is the peak of the capital defense force. Watching the elites in action gives her a clear picture of what they are really up against. At first glance, the soldiers look like they are moving at light speed, but Lavarasu knows better. It is not just raw speed, it is the result of intense training and discipline. Watching them entrench themselves so fast proves that the King New Army is a different breed. The main event is finally arriving as the infantry battalion rolls out with the heavy hitters. They are bringing in 57mm mountain guns to provide some serious fire support for the push. Our girls are definitely feeling the pressure as the artillery units begin to deploy. The 75mm mountain gun regiment is rolling out to provide some heavy support. These orc artillery units are ready to show everyone what real firepower looks like. Lavarasu takes in the view as the Grenadier Division sets up a massive defensive line. 2,000 soldiers are now locking down a position 800 meters wide. It is a common mistake to think these orcs are just big and slow. Their bodies are built of pure muscle, making them incredibly fast on their feet. These units can pull off some insane sprints when they charge together. Over a short distance, they can actually outrun a heavy horse at full speed. This unstoppable charge is known as the Orc Tsunami for a good reason. It is a wave of pure force that looks like it can crush anything in its path. Arwen and Lavarasu check the watch and realize how efficient their deployment has been. It has not even been an hour since they arrived, yet the army is already fully operational. Eleanor and Arwen analyze the map and find the enemy formation quite annoying. The enemy is keeping their reinforcements right by the commander's side, making a flank attack a difficult move. Having a solid reserve unit is basically the ultimate insurance policy. They can flip the script and save the day when things start looking shaky on the front lines. Eleanor leans in and asks Arwen if she has caught on to the change yet. The vibe on the field is definitely shifting in a way they did not expect. They both realize the Orcsan army has totally abandoned the tight formations they once excelled at. It is a massive departure from their old ways that completely changes the rules of engagement. Breaking a spread-out formation like this is a total nightmare without some heavy backup. She knows they are going to need either the big guns or a massive cavalry charge to actually make a dent. Evolution is mandatory when modern firearms can delete an entire unit in seconds. Staying grouped up is just asking for an early grave, so the smart move is to spread out and hug the dirt. These skirmish tactics might look new to some, but they are common knowledge for our squad. They have seen this play before and know exactly how the mechanics work. Over a century ago, they used these exact same tricks to run circles around the orc army. History is basically repeating itself, and the Dark Elves are the ones who wrote the playbook. Lavarasu checks in with the Brigadier General to see what the play is. The answer is a hard pass on any offensive moves for now. The strategy map shows a mess of hypothetical arrows as the team tries to predict the next enemy rotation. It is a toss-up between a full encirclement and a sneaky backdoor flank. Everything hinges on a single three-way intersection in the middle of the field. The squad stays on high alert until a sudden distraction catches their eye from across the valley. A massive pillar of smoke rising from the distant camp has everyone on high alert. Instead of an attack, it turns out the orcs are just firing up the stoves for a mid-battle meal. The orcs are definitely not starving out here, with pots bubbling and fresh bread on deck. Watching the heavy hitters line up for hot soup like they are at a 5-star buffet really shows off the kingdom's deep pockets. Lieutenant Colonel Artis gets a sudden hit of caffeine nostalgia when she spots the orcs brewing fresh coffee. Finding high-quality beans on the front lines is basically the ultimate flex from the logistics team. The logistics of an orc diet are on another level. Artis and her squad can only watch in stunned silence as the soldiers load up massive blocks of rye bread like they are nothing. Elenway and Frida are stunned by the sudden hot meal. This level of hospitality is classic for the orc army, and it really keeps morale high. The hot food brings back vivid memories for the elven soldiers. It reminds them of the first time they were given a warm meal after being rescued. A messenger salutes and lets the squad know that lunch is officially ready. The officers look over at the steaming bowls of food waiting for them. Major General Eric Grevin inspects his mess tin with interest. The chefs use the exact same ingredients and recipe to recreate a familiar taste. Grevin starts eating and confirms that the ingredients are all good. He makes sure to tell everyone there are not any onions in the mix. The dog, like General Stoppet, is told he can finally relax and enjoy the soup. The entire group is grateful for a meal they can actually eat without worry. There is a tactical reason why the orc army cut onions and leeks from their supplies. Those ingredients are actually toxic to kobold soldiers, so the kitchen staff is playing it safe. The soldiers are getting a serious upgrade with mess tins filled with thick beef goulash, piles of rye bread, and plenty of butter. There's even hot coffee and a full cutlery set to round out the perfect field meal. It hits Dainaru that she hasn't had a single bite to eat or even a drop of water since leaving her settlement. Seeing the spread makes her realize just how starving she actually is. The mess tin is basically a bucket, making even the spoon look massive. She struggles to fit a single bite in her mouth at first, but once she starts, there is no stopping the feast. The rich beef shank broth mixed with paprika and tangy tomatoes is straight up irresistible. She is completely lost in the flavor, not even noticing the little bit of sauce on her face. The taste and quantity are definitely top tier, but that is not actually the biggest shock. Something else about this meal has her doing a double take. Dainaru looks over and spots the leadership sitting right among the troops. The high-ranking generals, senior staff, and even the king himself are all eating the exact same field rations as everyone else. In most other nations, the top brass would have a personal chef preparing 5-star meals while the rank and file suffered. Seeing the orc leaders share the same grub really shows the unity of this kingdom. Werner Reinders is loving his meal as he tastes the beef shank broth. He jokes that his troops have the skills of bandits and they have to remind him they are just honest soldiers. Dainaru looks around and sees her sisters finally enjoying a proper meal. She takes a seat and starts eating, feeling the stress of their journey finally lift. The mood stays high as the officers bring out some calvados, which is a favorite of the king. They insist she take some as a souvenir, calling the high-quality booze a true gift. She pours a bit of the firewater into her cup to see what the talk is about. One quick sip is all it takes to realize this drink is much stronger than she expected. A single breath shows she can handle the heat just fine. The generals are stunned that she is still standing, but she just calmly says she likes to indulge every now and then. The nickname Kuro was once a slur used against her people back in Elfland. Since Orcusson is a nation that prides itself on the color black, the word has transformed into a sign of respect. Grevin tells the guys not to be fooled because this girl has a bottomless tolerance for the strong stuff. Schwerin tries to scout her for his unit by promising more drinks, but he gets called out for trying to poach the king's staff. The entire room erupts as everyone raises their cups to celebrate. The generals are in high spirits, drowning out the room with loud laughs and endless cheers for their new comrade. She wears a confident smirk while nursing her drink. It seems like winning over the brass was way easier than she expected. The sheer amount of food on the table is enough to make anyone do a double take. We are looking at a mountain of bread and stew that shows the army does not play around when it comes to fuel. The official daily supply list is genuinely insane. They are handing out massive portions of meat, kilos of starch, and enough alcohol to keep the entire camp buzzing. Dainaru looks a bit overwhelmed by the mountain of food in front of her. While the regulars argue about the flavor, she is starting to grasp the insane level of planning needed to pull this off. Stoppet looks like he is about to go into a food coma, claiming one meal could last him half a week. Zabek just keeps the banter going, joking that the dog orc might have finally met his match. Things get serious as the conversation turns to the struggle of keeping these supplies balanced. Managing the appetite of an entire nation's army is a constant battle for the logistics team. Girim Kaito explains that managing giant wolves and eagle legions is a constant struggle. He points out that race-based units like the Dark Elf Brigade have a natural advantage when it comes to unity. Major General Grevin leans in to give the king a bit of a reality check. He thinks the boss is worrying way too much about the logistics of the campaign. He tells the king to trust the soldiers more because their bond is built on the simple things. Sharing a cup of coffee and some bread naturally creates the kind of support an army needs. Dainaru is left holding a massive loaf of bread while looking completely stunned. She gets told to coordinate with Kaito or the entire unit might end up starving on a single loaf. She gives Kaito a respectful bow to show her appreciation for the advice. The general looks a bit caught off guard by her formal attitude and quickly thanks her back. Our girl is really starting to appreciate how well this army actually communicates. She keeps her focus and prepares to ask Kaito more about their operations. It is a total culture shock compared to how things were back in Elfind. In their old home, soldiers had zero voice and only the clan leader was allowed to speak their mind. In the Orcsan army, the rules actually encourage every soldier to think for themselves and share their opinions. This training style is called directive tactics. Zebek notes that the two armies first made contact during the afternoon. Scouts from the Eagle tribe begin their patrol high above the clouds. The Dark Elf scouts suddenly spot the target and start relaying magical communications. They focus their binoculars on a unit they call Milchku. A member of the Eagle tribe identifies himself as Blue 3. He spots a defensive line at the regiment level and calls in the exact map coordinates. Dainaru is losing her mind because the scouts are basically giant targets in the open sky. Even the enemy soldiers on the ground have already spotted them. The ground units acknowledge the Eagle report. They confirm the enemy has set up a defense near the bridge at the South Bank intersection. The Orc infantry holds the line in the trenches during the massive training exercise. They relay reports about a reserve unit and 6 cannons supporting the rear position. The control center uses dice rolls to simulate the chaos of battle. A radio call goes out to the scouts, informing them they have been hit by ground fire and must retreat. The ground troops celebrate their confirmed hit while the Eagle Scout acknowledges the orders. He decides to push his luck and fly a bit higher to keep the aerial intel flowing. Captain Lalnor Celebrin knows exactly how to get what she wants. She sidles up to a sentry with a cute smile and asks for a small favor. This poor soldier is already head over heels as she plays up the charm. Her sisters watch from a distance, warning us not to let that sweet voice fool us. This girl is a top-tier hunter and a brilliant strategist who never misses her mark. She has a reputation for using every creative tool at her disposal to finish the mission. She starts gushing over the soldier's rifle to butter him up for info. The guy tries to stay professional during guard duty, but he is clearly folding under the pressure of her questions. Ria can barely wrap her head around it. 1,500 meters is an insane engagement distance for a single rifle shot. The sisters are all hooked on the news, thanking the soldier for the intel as they try to process the idea of sniping an eagle from that high up. Orcsan tech is clearly built different, leaving human weaponry in the dust with a massive range advantage. This kind of firepower is making our girl seriously rethink everything she knows about combat. Ria spots the movement first and calls out as the 7th Parachute Division officially enters the chat. Orc infantry charges across the field with their sabers drawn and rifles ready for action. The commander waits until they're 300 meters out before dropping the hammer. On his signal, a massive volley erupts, instantly burying the entire front line in gunpowder smoke. These soldiers are absolute machines with their bolt actions, cycling fresh rounds with mechanical precision. They keep the rhythm going, dumping lead into the target zone without missing a beat. The shooting doesn't stop, and the Dark Elves are starting to realize just how long this relentless barrage has been going on. Looking across the field, the constant thunder of the Orcsan rifles shows zero signs of slowing down. The Dark Elves are literally holding their ears while the Orcs keep blasting. They are checking the inventory logs and cannot believe the sheer amount of equipment being used. Major Frida looks at the numbers and has a total brain melt. Each Orc soldier is carrying a massive load of 140 rounds of rifle ammo. That is more than double what the average human or elf soldier can carry into battle. It turns out Orcs are just built different, with the raw strength and endurance to haul that much gear. This is the dawn of a new era where tactics and technology have completely shifted. Their fangs and their shields are not just for show anymore. They have been replaced by pure firepower. The artillery crews are in the zone, calling out adjustments to rain down hell on the right coordinates. Every shot is confirmed as effective as the big guns keep singing. The roar of the cannons is so intense, it literally compresses the air. It is like the sound itself is designed to make anyone who opposes them lose their ability to think straight. Peering through the binoculars, they catch the Blue Army making a suspicious move in the field. General Dainiru's gut feeling was right on the money. The Red Army is pushing hard across the river. Commanders are already weighing their options for a massive flanking maneuver to end this simulation. But it is absolute chaos inside headquarters. The command staff is reeling as the situation suddenly shifts against them. The tactical map reveals a nightmare scenario. The Blue Army successfully bridged the river and is now circling around for a flank that no one saw coming. Even Dainiru is genuinely impressed. She admits that these northern soldiers are on a completely different level than she expected. Schwerin strides up to the king with zero chill. He is ready to speak his mind on how the North really handles its business. He starts roasting the staff for being too soft on logistics. Our boy believes a real soldier can grind out a 4-day war on just 2 days of snacks. Taking risks is the only way to win a real war. To Schwerin, being too cautious is just a fancy way of saying you're dragging your tail and slowing down. Our king shifts the vibe with a sudden weather report. Holding his hand out toward the clouds, he casually mentions it is going to rain tomorrow. The announcement leaves the veteran commander totally stunned. The second day of the exercise starts with a literal downpour, proving the Gustav weather forecast was spot on. Our troops are slogging through the mud as the rain turns the battlefield into a messy grind. Scene shift to the Blue Army Logistics Hub, where things are a total madhouse. It is a non-stop cycle of wagons and supplies moving through the storm. Introduce Captain Rhea Ephialtes, the energy bomb behind the Dark Elf Brigade logistics. She is stepping up to keep everything running smoothly in this mess. Rhea is on her own after parting with her sisters on day 1. The local orc soldiers are completely distracted because an elf in uniform is basically a myth come to life for them. Flashback to her time at the Red Army base where the vibe was clearly lacking. She was not exactly feeling the setup and let her face do all the talking. An orc officer catches her mood and suggests checking out the Blue Army side instead, since they are fresh from the north. He is convinced the chaos over there will be way more interesting for her. They ride across General's Hill and pull into the Blue Army base looking like they spent the day in a sandstorm. The host commander wastes no time, immediately calling for water and dinner to get her back in fighting shape. The host commander leads Rhea to the mess hall, admitting the food won't be 5-star quality compared to the city. It is a logistics hub through and through, but they can still pull together a solid meal for her. Turns out solid was a massive understatement because the table is loaded with sausages, pickles, and wine. Between the fresh rye bread and the oatmeal soup, this wartime ration is looking like a high-tier buffet. Rhea starts digging in, noting that Orcsan culture goes big on lunch while keeping dinner light and simple. It is the total opposite of the customs back home, but she is starting to get used to the grind. Sitting alone in the empty mess hall, the silence hits a little different. Even with a full plate, she can't help but wish her sisters were there to share the vibe. Peering out into the rainy night, she watches the horizon light up with the flashes of distant shells. The exercise is still going full throttle, and even from here, she can tell the tension is at an all-time high. Checking out the train tracks, Rhea realizes the simple genius of the station design. The platforms are built at the exact same height as the wagon floors to make loading a breeze, leaving her wondering why no one thought of this sooner. One officer points and shouts over the noise to keep the flow moving. That is it. This load is number 28, hurry up, he yells, pushing the crew to stay on schedule. Logistics in the Orcsan army is a kobold game. An officer is currently losing his cool over a shipment error, while Rhea watches the meltdown from the sidelines. Brains over brawn is the real flex here. This tribe has the market cornered on accounting and bookkeeping thanks to their deep history in finance. Being lightweight makes them the ultimate coachman for the supply wagons. It is standard procedure for a tiny officer to lay into a massive orc soldier for being too slow. Time to put a stop to the yelling. Rhea steps up to get the sergeant's attention before things get even louder. A terrifying glare meets a cheerful vibe. The tension is thick until she breaks it with a wide grin. The power dynamic shifts in a heartbeat. One look at her rank has the sergeant stumbling over himself to give a panic salute. The entire schedule is falling apart. Reckless moves at the front have caused a logistical nightmare that has the supply carriages stuck in a traffic jam. Rhea listens while the sergeant major vents about the rain making a mess of the operation. She shifts focus by spotting the specific wagons loaded with fresh food supplies in the busy yard. The sergeant is shocked she can identify the cargo at a glance since the crates all look identical from the outside. Rhea makes it sound easy, explaining she simply senses the cooling magic radiating from the containers. This realization hits the sergeant like a ton of bricks. Lacking magical power himself, he never considered that the magical signatures of the goods could be used for tracking. A massive theory starts forming as the sergeant stops Rhea to dig deeper into the concept. He realizes that even someone with very low magical affinity should be able to pick up on those specific cooling signatures. The possibilities are endless if they can tag different boxes with unique magical markers to sort the entire inventory. Just as the brainstorm gets going, a loud shout for the captain interrupts the conversation. The sergeant is officially obsessed and asks Rhea for a full breakdown of how her sensing method works. Little do they know, this casual chat is the spark that ignites a global revolution in shipping. What started as a simple exchange evolves into a total overhaul of how the world handles logistics. This moment marks the birth of the magic item management system, changing global trade and supply chains forever. Meet Florian Taubert, a first-class logistics soldier of the Kobold Beagle breed. He is currently hard at work driving a supply carriage through the rough terrain. This kid grew up in the northern city of Meltmere, where his family ran a local hardware store. They mostly sold kitchenware, and he was raised by a pair of kind-hearted parents. While the military was a shock to the system at first, Florian is actually starting to enjoy the lifestyle. He is holding his own in the ranks and finding his place among the other soldiers. His superior, the sergeant major, might look like a terrifying beast with a gaze that could kill, but appearances are deceiving. Florian knows the commander is actually a compassionate leader behind that tough mask. The base pay of 15 marks is not much to brag about, but a recent promotion to skilled soldier is bringing in a nice raise. Our boy is just happy he can finally send some money back home to his mom. The plan is to save up as much as possible before his service ends, so he can attend a business university. He truly believes this is a land of opportunity where anyone can succeed with enough determination. Massive military exercises are basically free travel opportunities for the infantry. They get to ride the rails and see cities they never even knew existed while on duty. The squad is trying to stay positive with the promise of a capital tour once the mission is over. Even though they are freezing in the middle of the night, the hype for a little vacation is keeping them going. The Grenadier Regiment pulled off a huge move by building a floating bridge and charging the enemy. Now the battle is raging into the night, but the victory comes with a major supply bottleneck at the crossing. Florian is shivering hard despite his heavy coat, but his focus is purely on the mission. He knows his comrades need a hot meal, and he is determined to deliver those potatoes to the front. The military police finally give the green light for the carriages to start crossing. Florian takes the reins with confidence, claiming he is the best driver in the whole squad. Disaster strikes as the bridge starts to buckle and snap under the heavy load. Horses panic and wood splinters as the carriages begin to tumble into the water. 3 full carriages plunge into the river, sparking a chaotic rescue effort on the banks. The soldiers scramble to count the survivors as 5 people are reported to have gone under. The command is clear to prioritize lives over the cargo, while they drag soldiers from the freezing water. They manage to save most, but the vibe turns dark when they realize one soldier is still missing. Gustav is officially done with the game, slamming his fist and demanding an immediate halt to the divisional exercise. The king is on one right now, and he wants everyone to stop what they are doing immediately. The entire command staff is left standing there like NPCs while Gustav gives the new play. He is fine with general drills continuing, but he wants a full search party gathered and deployed right now. Our boy gets real close, dropping some heavy philosophy about military sincerity and the thin line between peace and war. His gaze is intense enough to melt steel, and it is clear he is not taking any excuses. Gustav is not about to lose face as king, demanding the exercise stop before his reputation takes a hit. Daineru is in the back looking completely baffled, probably wondering if her boss finally lost his mind. With a casual claim that he is going to stop the rain, Gustav starts heading for the exit like he is about to fight the weather itself. He tells Seebeck to stay put while he goes out to handle business. Stepping out into the freezing downpour without even a second thought, the staff can only watch from the tent as their king marches into the storm like he owns the sky. The officers are definitely feeling the vibe shift, noting that Gustav has not pulled that specific move in a hot minute. Whatever the king is planning, it is clear he is about to show off something legendary. Schwerin mentioned that everyone should have already felt the benefits of what was coming. He was genuinely surprised that Kuro still had no idea about the situation. Daineru was left completely confused by the cryptic talk while the king walked off. The general told her to just be patient and watch what happened next. Standing alone in the middle of the downpour, Gustav did not even flinch as the storm battered him from every side. Daineru focused on his lips and realized he was chanting something ancient. It was not any language she recognized from history books or common speech. He sounded less like a king and more like a desperate orphan begging for help. His voice was filled with a strange, heavy sorrow that echoed through the rain. Calling out to the sky and begging the sun to return, he demanded that the rain stop right now as if he was ordering the weather itself. A massive beam of pure light suddenly punched through the dark clouds. Daineru could only stare in shock as an incredible warmth washed over the entire area. Daineru is straight up ascending, feeling a warmth so deep it almost feels like a physical embrace. The freezing rain doesn't even matter anymore, as she struggles to process this impossible heat. A vision of her younger self suddenly surfaces, surrounded by nothing but a vast, golden wheat field. The weight of the past hits hard as memories of howling wolves and military chaos flood back. It's too much to take in, making the reality of this moment feel completely out of reach. Real magic is supposed to be about internal focus, not something that can actually rewrite the world like this. This has moved past simple spells and into the realm of the divine. Daineru watches the king in total silence, finally realizing that Gustav is built different. The general confirms the shift in the air, revealing that the army first witnessed this godlike power right after the Battle of Rosalind. Back then, the orcs were thoroughly defeated and retreating through a brutal drought with zero water. They were cornered and dying until a sudden surge of power changed the course of history. Daineru stands frozen as the sky opens up. A pillar of light pierces the gloom, and she can only watch in silence. The heat is too much to handle. Daineru breaks down as her tears flow, realizing this is not fear but something far more overwhelming. She thinks back to the tragedy of her people. Even after watching her kin die and crossing the river to safety, she never cried once. But a simple wish for rain now breaks her resolve. Flashback to the desperate days of the Orc army. A bloodied soldier smiles at a young recruit and promises to ask the heavens for a miracle. And just like that, the rain came. They drank every drop to survive the journey home, knowing they would have perished without that sudden gift from above. The general calls out Seebeck for bringing up the old stories. He explains that after multiple miracles, they begged that person to lead them, eventually crowning him as their king. Daineru can barely process that Gustav was the one behind it all. The general adds that the king even used his power to help her people cross the border without being spotted by the White Elves. Schwerin explains how the king's vision built this entire nation. Daineru watches the moon, finally understanding the weight of his legacy. A soldier shatters the quiet with a desperate sprint toward the camp. The command center kicks into high gear, ordering an immediate search of the area. Leonor tries to keep the momentum going, but the orcs have reached their limit. They are collapsing into a deep sleep right on the grass. The rescue mission turns out to be a mess of miscommunication. The captain dives into the reeds, leaving the rest of the unit to catch up. An orc floats aimlessly while Leonor hauls a small kobold to the shore. She calls for help, refusing to let the little soldier slip away. The medical team confirms the soldier will pull through. They load him onto the stretcher and head for the safety of the medical carriage. A moment of peace as the captain starts to dry off from the swamp water. She reaches for her gear, and the sergeant major is already there with her hat. A tearful salute from the black dog kobold. He chokes out a sincere thank you to Rhea for saving his subordinate's life. The entire unit stands at attention to honor the young dark elf. Everyone knows that without her magical tracking, the rescue would have been impossible. Rhea keeps it humble and insists that the clearing weather was the only reason she found him. As the carriage rolls away, the soldiers call out that he was simply born under a lucky star. A few days in a hospital bed are enough for Taubert to recover from the hypothermia. He eventually heads back to his unit and joins the fight when a fresh conflict erupts. The long road winds through the countryside under a dark, looming sky. That new war would be his last, as the young soldier fell in battle before he could ever return home. The divisional exercises are officially scrapped for the day. A set of dice rolls to a stop as the focus shifts toward the massive military headquarters. Inside the control department, it is total chaos. Papers are flying everywhere while the officers scramble to figure out their next move. Elsewhere at General's Hill, the field exercises wrap up. The high command transitions into the commentary phase as the sun hangs low over the command tent. The vibe shifts instantly when the announcement hits that the king is entering. The room goes dead silent as Gustav steps in to oversee the debrief. Our boy Gustav waves off the formalities. He gives a simple hand gesture and tells his generals to stay focused and keep the meeting moving. One of the commanders is worried the king is just going to tire him out, but Gustav is hyped. He is convinced that this is where the actual fun starts. With a rough chuckle, the general agrees to kick things off. The map is out, and the real strategy session begins. Bottom line, logistics is always going to be a mess. The general gets straight to the point while Werner watches the briefing from the side. From railway issues to bad weather, the list of potential disasters is endless. The officers just sit there and soak in the stress of keeping a whole army fed. Sometimes you just have to send it. Schwerin admits that if they want to keep moving, the troops have to live off their own packs for 4 days and pray the supply line catches up. Daineru nods along, but she knows this plan is a huge gamble. It makes sense on paper, but she is already spotting the red flags. These rations are basically a snack compared to what a soldier actually needs. We are talking just some dry bread, canned beef, and water to keep them going. The troops are out there grinding with nothing but the basics. They are stuck eating canned meat in the mud while the brass figures out the next move. It is not that the king is ignoring logistics, he is just making the tough calls. In war, you have to make some unreasonable demands, and 4 days is the limit for this kind of push. Eric Greven brings up a grim tradition about leaving your life in the hands of fate once you hit the battlefield. He argues that sourcing supplies from the locals is a necessary evil as long as they call it procurement. Our MC warns that forceful taking is a disaster waiting to happen and would only repeat the failures of the Dutone War. The briefing explains that there are really only 2 ways for an invading army to feed itself on the move. Procurement is the clean approach where the military actually pays the locals and keeps the books balanced. Requisitioning is the dark side of the business where they just grab what they want and leave a worthless receipt. The room gets heated when someone calls it out as plundering, but the officers insist there is a clear difference. The briefing gets technical as the officers debate exactly when to pull the trigger on local procurement. If every individual soldier starts taking things on their own, it officially becomes the crime of plundering. Letting the ranks run wild would shred their discipline and turn the whole campaign into a horror show. Uncontrolled chaos like that leads to assault and a total breakdown of military morals. Without strict command, these guys stop being an army and basically become a pack of bandits. It is a slippery slope that ends with the entire organization losing its soul. Orcs and military law does not play around when it comes to theft. The price for crossing that line is a one-way ticket to a firing squad execution. This dude asks the tough questions about where the line actually sits. He wonders if a squad or even a full battalion doing it makes it any better. But the answer remains a hard no. Permission is usually only granted to units big enough to handle their own supply trains. Daineru reflects on her past when she thought grabbing local resources was just part of the game. Our MC realizes her perspective has shifted. There's a world of difference between an army that relies on taking from the start and one that only does it out of necessity, even if they look the same on paper. This dude tries to find a loophole, asking if requisitioning is actually okay for units on the move. The officer shuts him down quick, explaining that it is a legal gray area under military law. He lays out a scenario where a random boat pops up during a bridge exercise. Daineru watches as the hypotheticals get very specific. If an engineer commander grabs that boat to finish the mission, it is officially labeled as requisitioning. Since it serves a clear military purpose, nobody calls it plundering. But things get messy if those same guys break into a local farmhouse for a snack break. Swiping food and alcohol without permission is where the line starts to blur. That kind of behavior triggers an immediate investigation by the military police. It is a question of pure discipline, and getting it wrong means major trouble. The briefing shifts to the winds, highlighting how the Kobold communication units and Eagle Scouts crushed it. The room buzzes with excitement about bringing these tactics into the next campaign. Back in the room, the commander looks for feedback, but our girl is just over there having a moment. She lets out a heavy sigh, looking completely unimpressed by the presentation. Our girl is caught in a mental loop, weighing the pros and cons of actually speaking her mind. She has spotted some massive gaps in the new strategy and knows she cannot just let it slide. Deciding to just send it, she quotes a famous poet to justify her sudden outburst. She stands up and calls out for the attention of the higher-ups. Surprisingly, the brass is willing to hear her out. She takes the floor and immediately starts pointing out the flaws in their magical communication and detection plans. She keeps her cool and thanks them for the chance to contribute. Even with the nerves creeping in, her focus on the mission is absolute. Meet Major General Helmut Staupitz, the top dog in the communications department. He is not saying a word, just watching her with an intense, unreadable gaze. She asks to borrow the blackboard so she can actually show them what she is talking about. Despite the awkwardness of being the new person on the team, she is determined to make her point. Grabbing the chalk, she starts sketching out the tactical layout of a magic soldier battalion. She is ready to tear their current strategy apart piece by piece. She takes the floor and gives credit where it is due, noting how impressive the Kobold tribe's magic was during the training. Internally, she is cringing at how much she is laying on the flattery, but she knows she is not technically lying. Stepping up to the board, she points out the obvious flaw in their current 5-kilometer detection range. She keeps her cool while hoping the brass catches on, explaining that they need to pull data from multiple battalions to fix the issue. Drawing it all out for the room, she shows how crossing those signal lines can finally give them a pinpoint location on the enemy. The realization hits Major General Rotenberger like a truck as he finally connects the dots on magical triangulation. With a satisfied smirk, she notes that this same logic works perfectly for intercepting enemy communications from a distance too. Leonor uses a simple diagram to explain that magic comms are basically just yelling. If you're within 2.5 kilometers, the message comes through crystal clear. But even if you can't hear the words, you can still sense the noise from double the distance. This 5-kilometer detection range is the real game changer that gets the whole room buzzing with ideas. Our king completely loses it and starts laughing at the sheer audacity of her plan. He praises her for the incredible effort. He knows she is pointing out the army's biggest blind spots with her tactical genius. The vibe in the room gets heavy as he points out the fatal flaw. If they keep this up, the Elfin army will see them coming from a mile away because their magic is on another level. One of the officers is in total denial, calling the whole idea ridiculous. He can't believe their current system is basically a giant beacon for the enemy. Gustav admits he never expected the elves to be that capable. He might be a god at controlling the weather, but he realizes he is completely outclassed when it comes to communication. Daineru hands over a notebook containing the exact troop deployments from both sides during the entire exercise. She tells the king it should be mostly accurate, and the officers are already losing it. They cannot believe she managed to track everything with this level of detail. General Schwerin is visibly shaken as he clutches his head in total disbelief. His colleague just laughs and tells the old man to stop being so weak since the solution is simple. Finding his focus, the general starts planning a full magical communications lockdown for their next move. They will stick to telegraphs until the moment they are ready to strike. Our king turns his attention to the massive Eagle commander, Major General Reinders. He knows this strategy will be a game changer if they play their cards right. He tasks the Eagle tribe with mastering this new detection method through some serious research. Reinders salutes and accepts the royal order with a sharp response. A few officers share a quick laugh about the extra gear they will have to haul into the sky. The vibe in the room lightens as they wrap up the briefing. Gustav looks back at Schwerin and notes how glad he is that the general finally heard the truth. Lalnor definitely lived up to her promise to change their perspective on the war. Gustav leans in, dropping some heavy history on the room. He explains that their failure at Rosalind Valley over a century ago finally makes sense now. A flashback shows the brutal reality of that past defeat where orcs were picked off from every angle. Without magical comms, they were basically sitting ducks for elven ambushes. Back in the present, Gustav realizes they were likely being tracked through signal triangulation. He looks to Dineru for confirmation, acknowledging her sharp tactical mind while a laugh starts to brew in the corner. Schwerin is losing his mind with a mix of shock and relief. The realization hits him so hard that he can barely stay in his seat as the pieces finally click into place. The general bellows that he will finally sleep soundly for the first time in over 100 years. Even the king has to crack a joke about the old man finally getting some rest. Moving the conversation along, the king asks for more intel from their dark elf ally. He wants the rest of the staff to hear every detail of how the elves used to operate. Dainiru is impressed by the king's willingness to listen and learn. She agrees to share another secret strategy from their ancient wars to help the orc army level up. Dainiru drops a tactical bombshell, revealing that the old elf strategy focused entirely on hunting down enemy generals and officers. The orc officers are absolutely mauling at the news, calling the elven tactics a total coward move. Dainiru isn't even fazed by their outrage, noting that their heated reaction was exactly what she expected. She takes them back a century to the Dutone War, a time when continental battles were treated like a straight-up art form. Back then, kings led professional soldiers into combat with the goal of incapacitating opponents rather than ending them, making officer hunting a total taboo. War was all about chivalry and one-on-one duels, a spirit of honorable combat that some orcs still cling to today. The generals soak in the history lesson, but they can't help but wonder how anyone managed to distinguish specific targets in the middle of a messy battlefield. Dainiru breaks down how the old-school style was a tactical nightmare, starting with those loud, flashy banners. The king stays locked in while she points out that their traditional helmets were just as bad for keeping a low profile. Back in the day, orcs and generals flexed with these iconic spiked helmets that eventually shaped the design of modern military gear. They looked epic on the battlefield, but they were essentially high-profile targets. Those helmets just aren't safe anymore, Dainiru says, dropping a tactical reality check on the room. The officers are left to rethink their entire uniform now that they know their pride is putting them in the crosshairs. Recalling the recent exercise, she describes how the sun glinted off their polished gear like a homing beacon. She makes it clear that if she were the enemy, she would take that shot without a second thought. Gustav makes an executive call and bans the traditional helmets on the spot, ordering his troops to switch to low-profile caps. He even commands them to wrap their shiny scabbards in cloth to stay hidden, prioritizing survival over style. The sudden shift in tradition leaves Schwerin completely rattled, as he struggles to process the end of an era. Sensing the tension, Gustav checks in to see if the old general has a problem with the new tactical direction. Under the old Continental Code, hiding from the enemy was seen as a major coward move for any self-respecting leader. If targeting a general was a low blow, then the general was expected to stay visible at all costs to keep their dignity. Gustav drops a reality check on a sweating Schwerin, explaining that modern war is too complex for reckless leaders. If a general goes down, the entire unit is left in total chaos. Clapping his hands, the king calls the exercise a wrap and celebrates a job well done. As darkness settles over the landscape, it is finally time to eat. The dinner spread is a total vibe, and Dainiru is clearly loving it. She finds the southern-style beef stew to be one of the best things she has ever tasted. This is gourmet-level cooking, featuring beef chunks simmered in vegetable broth and served with 3 unique sauces. They follow it up with a toast and some rich barley soup made from the same flavorful broth. Laughter fills the room as Dainiru finally opens up to the other generals. The meal has turned into a genuine bonding moment for the whole command staff. Silhouettes stand out against the night sky as she thinks back on the king's magic. Her sister Ria breaks the silence to ask if she is heading home in the morning. Dainiru is surprised when the king and his giant wolf Advin walk over to her. He shows her some notes and decides the Dark Elf Brigade needs a much better name. Under the starry night sky with 2 moons, he reveals the new title is the Enfanglia Brigade. He turns to her and asks what she thinks of the new brand. The name hits her hard because it comes from classical Arabish. In their old myths, it belongs to the legendary founder of the giant wolf tribe known as the Giant Jaw. The history behind it is pretty brutal. This was the name of the massive wolf that devoured the queen of the Light Elves in ancient times. Even with the dark past, she is visibly moved by the gesture. She can barely find the words to tell him how wonderful the name really is. Standing close to the massive wolf, she feels the weight of her new unit name. The king tells her not to hesitate and to embrace this new identity. He recognizes the Dark Elves as proud and strong warriors who have survived just like his own race. They finally have a name that honors their true power and shared history. The soldiers invoke the names of their ancestors as they prepare for what comes next. A dark question about the Light Elves hangs in the air. Those massive teeth are a clear reminder of the power they now wield. The massive wolf head bares its teeth as a terrifying order is given. The commitment to this new path is absolute. A pledge of loyalty is made without any hesitation. Back at the campsite, the heavy atmosphere starts to lift. The king shares a laugh, mentioning that he has never seen a display like this before. It is a rare moment of connection between the two leaders. The exercise comes to a close under the light of 2 moons. The results were fruitful for everyone involved. She reacts with a playful look, asking if things really went that well. Welcome to Walder Berg. We are dropping in during the stellar calendar year 876. Spring officially fades as the summer heat of July takes over. The Dark Elf soldiers have put in the work and are finally looking like a real unit. The name change is official. Formerly known as the Dark Elf Brigade, they are now the Enfanglia Brigade and have completely finished their formation. This world has some very specific military jargon. They like to break down exactly how an army is built from the ground up. It starts with a budget to organize the unit, then the formation where everything takes shape. Once the training is complete, these soldiers are ready for war at a moment's notice. Dainaru is at her desk signing off on all the final details. They have decided to throw a massive ceremony to show the world what this new brigade can really do. The city is buzzing with energy for the grand showcase. High-class guests are arriving in style as the festive atmosphere takes over the entire town square. The sky is wide open as the kingdom celebrates the final formation of the new brigade. Perfect weather for a grand opening. Dainaru stands tall in her official gear, throwing a sharp salute. She gives a formal thank you to Reinders for the support. Moving inside, Dainaru addresses the High Command. She makes sure to thank Senior General Zeton for his role in the rollout. Logistics were the real hurdle, but the horses arrived just in time. Dainaru credits the general influence for getting the procurement finished. Meet August Zeton, the Army Cavalry Inspector. He plays it cool, waving off the praise like it was nothing. The party is officially starting, and Zeton tells our girl to go handle her hosting duties. He is heading to the waiting room to relax while she manages the guests. He pauses at the door for one last word. A genuine well done leaves Dainaru with a confident smile. The Orcsan national anthem kicks things off as the Dark Elf Cavalry leads the parade. Dainaru leads the formation while the unit flag waves. The force is divided into 3 cavalry regiments, with our girl officially taking charge as the brigade commander. Citizens are losing it as the army official march begins. One look at the formation and everyone is calling it beautiful. The tempo stays high as the infantry moves as one. Discipline is at an all-time peak. Following close behind is the Mountain Ranger Regiment, totaling over 2,000 soldiers. The parade keeps rolling with supply wagons and the engineer company. Heavy artillery is next in line, followed by a full band setting the pace. The troops end the showcase by belting out the Enfanglia Brigade song. It is a grim anthem about leaving mercy behind and moving forward without forgiveness. Music and dance used to be their soul, but now it is fuel for an endless hatred. This unit is built on a thirst for blood that will never be quenched. Back when they first arrived in Waldeburg, the old songs were just for comfort. The weight of their new name has changed the meaning of every lyric. Pity is a luxury they cannot afford anymore. They are leaning into a future where they tear through enemies with everything they have. The rain marks the start of a new chapter filled with slaughter. There is no turning back from this path of revenge against the Light Elves. Gustav officially welcomes the Enfanglia Brigade as brothers in arms. He promises that their choice to fight will lead to a shared glory for the entire nation. International reporters are already spreading the word to the nations of mankind. The alliance is out in the open, and the world is holding its breath. The old homeland is a closed chapter. Anticipation for the inevitable clash is the only thing that matters now. This brigade anthem is not exactly a vibe, basically telling their enemies to prepare for a nightmare. Gustav wraps up the ceremony with a cold promise to back them up, officially declaring the unit ready for war. Their first job is standing guard at the royal residence, turning the palace gates into a high-profile stage. It does not take long for the locals and tourists to lose their minds over the flawless rifle drills. Dainaru knows their presence here is more than just security. It is a calculated middle finger to the Light Elves. A voice from inside the palace breaks the tension, demanding the workaholics finally take a break and get some food. Gustav sits her down for a meal and some real talk, explaining that a top-tier leader needs to master the art of looking like they have nothing to do. Gustav is all about that lore drop and asks Dainaru to spill the tea on the rest of the Elfine mythology. He is genuinely curious about the stories her people carry. Flashback time, they spent their lunch breaks vibing and chatting about random stuff, with Gustav proving he is a total walking encyclopedia. He drops a wild claim about the planet once having 13 moons before one crashed into the ocean. Dainaru is stunned because that lines up perfectly with her own legends. Eventually, the king opens up his massive library to her. She is basically living the bookworm dream while the deputy chief of staff keeps a close eye on them. While browsing, she spots something in a newspaper that catches her off guard. She takes a long look before quietly heading out with a lot on her mind. Another day, another chance for Dainaru to act all mysterious with that look on her face. Gustav approaches her with a surprise he has been holding on to. He gifts her a pair of high-tech prism binoculars, and she is absolutely geeking out over how clear the view is. Gustav is just happy his gift was a total win. The officer admits there is still a wall between them. Dainaru realizes it is not just her imagination as she holds onto her new binoculars. Her daily routine at the palace becomes quite predictable. It usually begins with watching the flawless changing of the guard ceremony. The days are filled with library sessions, shared lunches, and leading her brigade. She balances official business with quiet moments over a hot cup of tea. This peaceful life is a fresh start after the nightmare at the Sylvan River. Still, she knows these calm moments are just a temporary break before the next conflict. She focuses on the intense look in the king's eyes. It feels like she might be the only person capable of reaching the person hidden behind that gaze. The moment to act has finally arrived. She treats the situation like a calculated hunt, waiting for the exact second to move forward. Dainaru stops Advin in the hallway for a quick favor. She needs to speak with the king in private, just for today. Dainaru gives Advin the green light. She's genuinely thankful for everything. A new dish hits the table and immediately steals her attention. Growing up in the mountains meant seafood was a rare treat. Pickled herring was basically the only fish they ever saw. Now she is fully obsessed with scallops. Gustav catches her enjoying the meal and can't help but tease her a bit. Dainaru drops some deep lore while taking a smoke break. Apparently elves used to have both guys and girls back in the day. It is all thanks to the third queen of Elfland, a legendary figure who basically built the entire foundation of their modern society. Dainaru reveals that the third queen was the architect who made the elven race female only. According to her logic, this shift was the only path for their kind to achieve a more perfect existence. The general listens intently, offering a thoughtful nod as the weight of that history sinks in. The general mentions he has heard the legend before, but Dainaru just takes a slow puff from her pipe. She tells him the interesting part is actually about to start, catching him completely off guard. Leaning back with a smirk, she asks how he is going to react to the real story. Dainaru drops a major lore bomb. She reveals that the third queen of the elves was actually born human. The concept of a human somehow turning into an elf is enough to break the general's brain. He demands to know what that even means, but Dainaru has the specifics ready. To be more precise, the queen's claim was that she was reborn into this world. Dainaru reveals that elven legends are full of stories about humans being reborn as elves, or even descending into their world in their original bodies. This is way too much lore for the general to process, and he can only stare in shock at the idea of someone simply dropping in from another world. These visitors actually came in peace, bringing a wealth of knowledge to the elven race. They shared everything from agriculture and science to the secrets of mining. It turns out the entire foundation of their society was built on the gifts of these mysterious outsiders. The general sits in a heavy silence as the gravity of the story finally sinks in. Dainaru explains that these mysterious outsiders called themselves reincarnators, a title she once thought was just a myth. She admits it all sounds like a fairy tale, but her perspective shifted the moment she saw this kingdom for herself. Dainaru leans back with her pipe, finally dropping the question she has been holding on to. She looks him right in the eye and asks if King Gustav is actually a human reborn from another world. Gustav sets his pipe down, asking her exactly what tipped her off. Dainaru points out that his overwhelming talent was the first big clue. She brings up the advanced concepts he mentions like total war and industry, technical terms that sound like they come from another world entirely. Dainaru points out that Gustav has zero interest in orc women, which makes sense if he is actually a human inside. She is basically calling him out on his very specific type. Dainaru takes things up a notch by sitting on his lap and asking if he is interested in her. Our girl is not holding back at all with this bold move. Gustav wipes sweat from his face as she points out how human his thoughtfulness seems. He admits he cannot deny being drawn to her as his blush deepens. This dude quickly pivots to talking about his magic to hide his red face behind his hand. It is a classic move to dodge the sudden romantic tension. He explains that his magic and the incantations he uses should not even exist in this world. The chanting sounds like it belongs to a completely different language system from another land. Dainaru smirks while touching her ear and mentions that elves have sharp ears. Gustav is caught off guard, realizing she overheard his secret mutterings. Gustav finally drops the big reveal, explaining that in the world he came from, magic did not even exist. Back then, those words were just a little charm or a wish. Gustav is finally opening up about his origins, describing a world where magic and demons are non-existent. Dainaru is completely locked in, hanging on every word, as he begins to speak about the life he once lived. These stories include massive metal ships that fly through the sky and cargo vessels that can feed a city for a day. It is a level of logistics and engineering that makes their current world look like the Stone Age. Then he mentions bullet trains that cross continents in hours and communication systems that let you talk to anyone instantly. For someone living in a world of spells, this level of technology is mind-blowing. Continuing his explanation, he describes how humans dominated the sea and air without a single drop of mana. In his previous life, science and transport were the ultimate game changers. Even the most basic tools in his old world would be seen as legendary artifacts here. Daenerys feels like she is hearing a myth, but for Gustav, this was just his daily reality. Mankind even managed to reach the stars, launching metal towers into the deep void above. Daenerys gazes up at the sky, realizing the universe is much bigger than she ever imagined. Gustav admits those weird chants were just a childhood memory, until he used them at the Battle of Rosalind. That rain miracle was the spark that finally brought his human memories back to life. Our boy admits that her theory is right on the money. He cannot hide the truth anymore. He explains how the memories of his past world started as dreams, before becoming so clear he could barely tell them apart from reality. Daenerys catches the heavy vibe and asks if living like that was a struggle. Yeah, it was a total battle, and he had to fight every day just to keep moving. He never expected to live out a plot like this, feeling like he was trapped inside a story. What saved him during those 100 years was his people, who stood by him and served him faithfully despite knowing who he really was. Daenerys starts connecting the dots and asks if Seebeck, Schwerin, and Zeton are in on the secret too. She even mentions the giant wolf Advin as she realizes how deep his circle of trust goes. Back after the Battle of Rosalind, he actually slipped on the muddy ground caused by the very rain he summoned. He went tumbling right over the edge of a cliff. He thought his run was over until a massive wolf stood before him and pulled him back to safety. The wolf even asked him if he was truly an orc. Even with his human memories, Daenerys points out that our boy cannot figure everything out. We see a flashback to the moment Schwerin nearly gave up on the search for him. She admits there is still one specific thing she cannot understand even now. It has been bugging her since the very beginning of their journey. Daenerys gets right in his face and demands to know why he never made a move on her. She points out that he could have done whatever he wanted from the very start. Gustav keeps it classy and explains his code of honor. He believes that taking advantage of someone during a hardship is not something a real man should ever do. She looks at him with soft eyes and calls him a fine man. She grabs him in a tight hug and labels him dense for failing to read the room. Things get a little awkward with a visual gag about a rifle bullet that just will not fit. Daenerys looks completely flustered while struggling with the equipment. She admits that she was the one being slow the whole time. Since her clan consists only of women, some of them have developed a habit of getting together with each other. Daenerys gets real and admits she has lived a long time without ever knowing true pleasure. She is finally ready to dive into the deep end. She pulls him into a hug and reminds him that dark elves are built different than humans. Gustav stays stoic, but the aide is wondering why the king's face is suddenly doing that. Our boy decides to handle it and sweeps her off her feet. He jokingly asks if he should keep a doctor on standby for the main event. Daenerys can barely handle the heat of the moment. The military banter never stops as he carries her into the room. She is even down to bring an Earhart rifle and some field guns to their private battlefield. Under the moons, the night is quiet. It is time for them to plan out the rest of their strategy for the night. Cut to Tyrian, the capital city of the Elfine nation. Back in the Elven capital, a messenger delivers a report from the envoy in Camelot. The High Ministers listen in as she reveals the remaining Dark Elves have officially formed a new cavalry brigade under the Orcs. The ministers are totally repulsed by the news. They think it is disgusting for elves to serve barbaric orcs and complain that such trashy affairs are ruining their afternoon tea. One minister sees things differently. She looks over the report and calls it a truly wonderful piece of news. In their eyes, the Dark Elves were just filth that finally got swept out of the country. They are convinced this move will finally bring some peace to the heart of their queen. Raising a cup, she toasts to their nation, becoming even more peaceful. It is a total villain moment as they celebrate their prosperity in a world without Dark Elves. Mid-August was finally rolling around in the stellar calendar year 1876. The capital of Wildschwein was a total vibe this time of year. Most people agreed it was the best season to just exist in the city. With the temperature staying nice and cool, the streets were alive. Citizens hyped up the commander, shouting "Long live the Enfanglia Brigade" as she rode through. Life for Daenerys had definitely shifted since she joined the kingdom. The shade of the trees felt refreshing, but her daily routine was barely recognizable anymore. Our girl had officially become the woman of King Gustav. Feeding him cake while he chilled with a book was just part of the new normal. As the moons rose over the palace, the two shared quiet moments together. Behind closed doors, the atmosphere in the royal chambers got much more personal. Daenerys admired his smooth skin while they spent their night together. She felt completely enfolded by her beloved in their most private moments. Gustav is feeling the heavy weight of his past, thinking about the 30 years of responsibility he still has to carry for Elfind. She reaches out to her king, questioning the heavy, serious look in his eyes. She wonders why he is looking at her with such intensity. Gustav is surprised to find that she was actually awake, his hand resting gently on her back as they share this quiet moment. She encourages him to let it all out, promising to accept every single part of him now that she is officially his woman. A soft thank you echoes between them as the morning light begins to filter through the trees. Back at the palace, the king is in full diplomat mode. He is hosting an envoy and reflecting on a legendary general who passed away 20 years ago. Meet Claude Maxwell, the chief envoy from the Kingdom of Camelot who handles the high-stakes world of foreign affairs for the Orc Kingdom. Gustav respects the tactical depth of the late General Morlington. The man was a beast in an attack, but his real genius was how he managed his troops over time. Flashback to the Deutner War 60 years ago, this was a turning point for the nation, when Sir Duke Morlington took down a top-tier military genius. The pressure was on as they raced against time. Gustav admits they were lagging behind while rushing across the western border to make it for the final fight. Loyalty won out over prejudice that day. Even if the Duke had his doubts about the Demon Tribe, he kept his word and held the line against the Continental Army. June 15th, stellar year 815. This specific date marked the moment history changed forever. The tide finally turned when the reinforcements arrived. It was already evening by the time 125,000 orc troops smashed through the enemy flank. The battlefield turned into a vicious slaughterhouse under the black flags. Schwerin ordered his sons to show zero mercy as they began the final charge. A sea of black hats and bayonets floods the field as the Orcsan infantry begins their thunderous charge. Even decades later, the mere memory sends a shiver down Claude's spine. His grandfather led the Imperial Guard cavalry that day, witnessing a moment of shared glory for both Camelot and Orcsan. Our MC isn't interested in taking all the credit. He insists the victory belonged to General Morlington's unbreakable spirit rather than just the Orcsan army. Back on that historical battlefield, the king had personally praised the general as the true hero, but the old soldier wasn't having any of it. With a smirk, Morlington told the king not to be foolish. He believed it wasn't a solo act, but a victory forged by their union. Morlington eventually traded his uniform for a suit to become prime minister. He wasn't much of a politician, but he did secure one massive deal. This became the Camelot-Orcsan Treaty of Amity and Commerce. It was the very first historic pact ever signed between a human nation and the demonic land of Orcsan. I am convinced, Claude says, finally seeing the full picture. The treaty wasn't just a cold political move, but a deep debt of honor from the Duke for being saved on the battlefield at his lowest point. Fast forward 50 years, and that alliance has turned Orcsan into Camelot's most essential wingman. They're the ultimate shield, keeping the Glor Empire in check while acting as a major buffer against the Ravalna Empire to the east. It's not just about military might either. Huge Orcish corporations like the Farron's Trading Company are pumping insane capital into the economy, basically keeping Camelot afloat by snapping up their foreign bonds. The vibes at the table are high tier as Claude notes the incredible scent of his tea. General Schwerin confirms his hunch, noting that the leaves are a top-shelf import all the way from Pernambuco. Claude's attention drifts to a magnificent porcelain platter from the distant eastern seas. He asks the real questions, wondering if the rumors about the king's obsession with treasures from the east are actually legit. Then there's the tech gap. He admits that while they have their own goods, everyone is low-key forced to rely on Orcsan's superior magic engraving for the high-end stuff. A single magic plate changes the whole game for global trade. These cold preservation slabs are the secret sauce that lets them ship fresh meat across the ocean without it turning into a biohazard. As global tensions rise, nations are getting desperate to import Orcsan's legendary elixir. It is a massive investment, but this medicine is a total game-changer on the battlefield. Claude admits that on a personal level, he finds the Kingdom of Orcs absolutely fascinating. For a diplomat, this place is basically a goldmine of political interest. Human diplomats can't get enough of the king's stories, especially when he talks about his past wars and the treaties that followed. Ever since the pact with Camelot, the kingdom has been rolling out one trade agreement after another. Gustav has officially reached the status of an elder statesman in international circles. His latest move is a massive medical treaty that has all the neighboring nations watching closely. Word spread fast that Orcsan's word is as good as gold. A reputation is forming that this king never breaks a deal and would never dream of deceiving a human ally. The veteran leader leans in to drop some serious wisdom on the young diplomat. He wants to pass on a crucial lesson from his decades of navigating the political landscape. He asks what it really takes to be a diplomat, sharing a secret he learned from an old envoy long ago. The weight of his words hits hard as Maxwell watches with intense focus. Diplomacy is a non-stop grind of networking, filing reports, and profiling rulers just to boost your own reputation. Claude nods along to the golden rules, but Zabek drops a reality check about home countries ignoring reports from young envoys. To get around the red tape, the veteran suggests using his name as leverage. leaving our boy Claude stunned by the bold offer. Knowing that claims need receipts, Zabek grabs a pen and starts drafting a game-changing document as a parting gift. The paper is a power move stating Orkson has no interest in human land and will back Camelot if things get messy with the elves. Claude is losing his mind because this intel is a golden ticket. Even without a royal signature, his standing in the ministry is now unshakable. Business is officially concluded as Zabek politely sends the envoy on his way. Maxwell wraps up his visit and heads for the carriage while the palace doors swing open. Inside, Foreign Minister Bülow is already waiting to see how the meeting with the human envoy went. Gustav keeps it short and sweet, letting him know everything went exactly as planned. Our king tries to apologize for stealing the spotlight during the talks, but Bülow shuts it down immediately. He is a total fanboy, claiming the nation is better off when the boss takes charge himself. Even though he trusts the man is capable, Gustav cannot help but sweat over that sketchy bandit grin. He internally begs the dude to do something about that intimidating face. While staring out the window, the minister asks if he is really just another tool for the king's diplomacy. Gustav drops a stone-cold yes without a second of hesitation, earning a low laugh from his loyal aide. Moving on to the next appointment, Gustav mentions the envoy of Escania is already lined up. He vents a bit about humans treating him like an old man when he is actually still young for an orc. Bülow watches his leader with a sharp eye, noting that his work ethic has become more intense than ever. He cannot help but wonder if something big happened behind the scenes to spark this sudden fire. Our boy Zabek drops some cold truth about the nature of modern war. It is a completely different beast from their previous battles, and military muscle alone will not cut it. Zabek points out that attacking Elfland requires total diplomatic security. They have to juggle deterrence, appeals, and shady negotiations with every neighboring nation before making a move. Turns out the formation of the Enfanglia Brigade was actually a massive bait. They were fishing for a justification, hoping to provoke the elves into making the first mistake. The plan hit a major snag when the elves pulled the ultimate ghosting move. Elfin stayed completely silent and refused to give them any response at all. Using the human envoy as a middleman, they tried to corner the elves into a formal reply. They sent a message about improving diplomatic relations just to force Elfin to show their official stance on paper. Back at the palace, the top officials admit that starting a real war is a slow, grueling process. They knew from the jump that this international chess match would take some serious time. Nowadays, Daineru looks back at those intense days with a totally different vibe. Decked out in her finest uniform, she admits she might have let the hype get to her head back then. Daineru reflects on her journey, admitting things have gotten incredibly personal with her king. Looking back at the start of the Enfanglia Brigade, she is proud they pushed through every initial struggle. Now they share every win and push each other to reach even greater heights as a couple. Ever since they made it official, our boy has been the ultimate gentleman, showing more care than ever in their daily lives. He knows her vibe perfectly, skipping the typical jewelry for gifts she actually cares about, like high-grade military gear. She nearly short-circuits after finding out those binoculars cost a half-year salary for an officer. Then there is the high-end seaweed soap, a luxury brand used by royalty all over the world. Daineru discovered some luxury soap in the brass dish of Gustav's bathroom. The refined fragrance and perfect lather made the whole experience feel incredibly pleasant. Orc society actually prioritizes hygiene more than most human nations. From daily baths and starched shirts to advanced sewage systems, staying clean is just common sense for them. She could not get over how smooth his skin felt while they were together. Gustav noticed her interest and casually shared some of his personal care stash, calling it the good stuff. The secret turned out to be Orkson perfumed oil, specifically the Aqua Mirabilis 792. This is the top-tier gear they use for their daily grooming routine. This classic citrus blend has been around since the year 792 and avoids any heavy or sticky feeling. Even though it was originally made for men, the pure and clean scent is a perfect fit for her. This time around, she was the one who actually asked for more. Gustav gave her a big thumbs up, clearly happy to see her enjoying his favorite products. Our boy did not just stop at the perfume, hooking her up with the matching lotion and hair tonic too. He even gave her the inside info on which shops in the capital keep the shelves stocked. New day unlocked, specifically a Saturday in mid-August. The whole crew hits the morning market to grab supplies. Gustav, Daineru, and Advin look like they are out on a peaceful family grocery run. Breakfast together is a must before heading out to the Walderberg garrison. Daineru is still thinking about how good the food was as she rides out. The spread is elite. We are talking rye bread, fresh veggies, and a soft boiled egg wrapped in prosciutto. Top it off with some grilled wurst and a hot coffee. She realizes Gustav kept the meal light so she could digest quickly and stay active. He is out here being the ultimate considerate boyfriend. The grind at the garrison is 9 to 4 every day. As night approaches, she makes her way back to the king's residence to reset. Since it is Saturday, she only has to work a half day. She is already giggling like crazy thinking about her afternoon date with Gustav. Night falls over the king's residence. There is something about the atmosphere here that leaves a pretty big impression. It is the quiet professionalism of the staff. Major Muffling, Major Danbits, and the butler Felix are all keeping their lips sealed. Turns out the king has never had a single romance rumor until now. Felix and the crew are basically team captains for this new ship, deciding to just quietly support the couple from the sidelines. While heading out, Daineru starts thinking about Major Muffling's reputation. The man is known as the king's most trusted courier for a reason. According to Gustav, this guy is a machine when it comes to deliveries. No matter how far or how long it takes, he always reaches the destination and makes it back home safely. During the Dutner War, he was crossing enemy lines like it was a morning jog to deliver messages between armies. Daineru is legit blown away, realizing she could even trust this dude with a private letter for the king. Things at the residence are solid, but now her focus shifts back to her own unit. She knows the real challenges are waiting for her back at the base. Daineru rolls into the garrison on horseback to start her morning shift. She greets a sentry named Vasily as the guards snap into a sharp salute. Something feels a bit off, so she asks if there is a problem. The guards break a sweat and insist everything is perfectly normal. But the whisper network is already in full effect. Ria catches her sister off guard with a knowing look, leaving Daineru stuttering and completely flustered. Our girl realized a long time ago that an all-female brigade is a certified gossip factory. She knows exactly what the troops are talking about, and it is definitely her. Rumors about her and King Gustav are spreading like wildfire through the ranks. In a tight-knit group like this, once a juicy story starts, there is no stopping it. The gossip actually started a week ago at the front gates. The soldiers on duty began noticing a major shift in the way their commander carries herself. They have noticed she has a brand new, alluring vibe that she did not have before. The secret is out, and the whole brigade is tuned in. The squad is deep in gossip mode. They have noticed their commander has traded her wild energy for a more mature vibe. It does not take long for them to connect the dots to her early morning returns from the king's residence. Daineru is caught off guard by the sudden shift in the air. One of her soldiers rushes over with a frantic warning, whispering that she needs to hide something immediately. The suggestion of using a magical elixir for a cover-up leaves her completely stunned. The secret is out, and it is visible right on her neck. Her subordinate points out a bruise on her nape that she clearly did not realize was there. The realization hits Daineru like a ton of bricks as she freezes in embarrassment. She finally remembers the moment it happened. In her mind, she sees Gustav getting a bit too affectionate while she was getting ready. She curses the man under her breath for leaving such a telltale mark. That one little mark was all it took for the rumor mill to go into overdrive. Daineru sits in silence, realizing her reputation is changing even if her soldiers still respect her. Despite the gossip, their discipline remains rock solid. This unit is not just any group of soldiers. They are survivors who owe their lives to her, and their loyalty is absolute. They see her as their savior, which only makes the current situation more complicated. But that same loyalty is starting to backfire. Some of the troops are taking the rumors and twisting them into a dark narrative. They have started interpreting the situation in the worst way possible. The troops are out here writing fan fiction. They have cooked up this dark fantasy where their commander is some kind of tragic sacrifice to a greedy orc king. One look at their faces and you can tell they are taking this fake drama way too seriously. To be fair, they have seen the softer side of the orcs firsthand. From helping the kids to keeping watch, the orcs have been holding up their end of the deal since the escape. But the gossip mill does not care about logic. Our girl has officially reached her limit. She can handle people talking about her. But trashing Gustav's name is where she draws the line. She is out here catching an attitude and ready to explode. She knows exactly how much sleep Gustav is losing trying to do right by her people. Leaning into an orc soldier's back, she vents about how no one sees the effort he is putting in. The frustration is real. Enough with the overthinking. She is done playing defense and decides to handle this head-on. The Gustav way. No more tricks, just the direct approach. It is high noon on a Saturday and everyone is just trying to catch a vibe and relax. Some are tending to horses while others are polishing their gear. That peaceful mood gets shattered when the base intercom suddenly roars to life. The commander is on the mic and she is not asking. She commands everyone to stop what they are doing and listen up. The whole brigade freezes as her voice echoes through the yard. Daineru grabs the intercom to finally set the record straight. She is only giving them this explanation once, so they better keep their ears open. She takes them back to her roots as a master hunter. Back in the homeland, no prey ever escaped once she had them in her sights. She flashes a smug smirk and drops a truth bomb. She was never the one who got caught in some trap. With a massive blush, she declares that she went out on her own terms. Turns out, she was the one who bagged the biggest trophy of them all. The announcement sends the entire base into a complete meltdown. While the troops are losing their minds, the commander is back at her desk questioning her life choices. The yard turns into an immediate party zone. Everyone is breaking out the music and beer to celebrate their leader's major win. Listening to the rowdy cheering outside, she finally lets out a sigh of relief. She is proud of her crew and knows she is exactly where she belongs. Gustav really went on a whole side quest to find this bottle of lightning just for her. It is that fiery, high-proof spirit that tastes exactly like her homeland, and she is finally ready to crack it open. She is not about to gatekeep the good liquor, though. Waving the bottle, she calls over her loyal aide, Vasily, promising him a taste of the good life for always putting up with her chaotic energy. July 4th, year 877. While the Infanglia Brigade is busy with their ceremony, the rest of the world is not standing still. Elsewhere, a carriage is cutting through the landscape. People are already making moves for the war on the horizon. Scene change to the General Staff headquarters of the Orkson National Army. A high-end carriage pulls right up to the front steps. The guards are stunned to see a flashy pink carriage in a place like this. Out steps a lady who clearly has a massive budget for her fit. Total main character energy. She does not even need to say a word to command the entire room. This is Madame Isabella Ferrans, the CEO of the biggest trading company in Orkson. She is back at the logistics bureau, and you know she is here to talk numbers. She heads straight for the Deputy Chief of Staff office. This lady is all about the grind. Back at headquarters, Isabella is chilling with the high command while the tea service stays on point. The officers are not even stressed about missing the brigade ceremony since they can check out the new unit whenever they want. Business as usual. She slides over a leather-bound notebook, keeping things casual while handing over the latest batch of secrets. Griven is already muttering over the details while Rotenberger treats the report as a masterpiece. The staff is hovering in the background, making sure the coffee and cream are just right. Rotenberger starts talking shop about his lead role at the Topographical Engineering Bureau. Isabella keeps it polite, but the conversation is about to shift from geography to something way more intense. This bureau is not just about drawing maps or checking the weather. While they track town sizes and economic shifts, there is another layer to their operations. They are functioning as a secret intelligence agency. Every bridge, port, and railway in a foreign nation is just another piece of data for the Orkson war machine. The strategic map shows a world on the brink. Potential enemies are everywhere, but one specific nation remains out of reach for their spies. The Kingdom of Elfland is a ghost nation at this point. Diplomatic ties are dead, and they have been the virtual enemy for a long time. Getting inside their borders is impossible for anyone. Orcs, kobolds, and even giant eagles cannot find a way past the perimeter. Everything changed when the Dark Elves fled en masse. They provided the first real stream of fresh information from the outside. Isabella Ferrans was the one who pulled all those threads together. She is the reason Orkson knows anything about what is happening over there. Her business empire had humble beginnings. It started as a small trading company working for a northern regiment. Back then, it was just a small general goods shop that had already failed once. She was just running a simple canteen for soldiers. Fast forward to now, and she is a powerhouse. She dominates everything from telegraph manufacturing to global finance, making her the top CEO in the nation. Isabella's power is no joke. Despite being a kobold, she has risen so high that she commands human merchants and expands her influence deep into neighboring Camelot. Her reach goes even further than that. She has managed to find business partners who actually have active dealings within the borders of Elfland. From port investigations by shipping agents to traders sketching street maps from tourist guides, no detail was too small for her partners to collect. A huge reward convinced a railway engineer to hand over construction drawings, while a grateful merchant spent sleepless nights recording every rail joint and tunnel position. Every bit of that intelligence was funneled directly to the Bureau. Rottenberger's subordinates are even bragging that they probably know more about Elfland than the Elven military does. Usually she's the one providing the info, but this time the military is bringing their own data to the table. Rottenberger is impressed, noting that his own service can't compare to her loyalty. Sitting comfortably with their tea and cakes, the generals confirm the results are satisfactory. They believe the day they finally see the fruits of her labor is not far off. Hearing that the war with Elfind is right around the corner, Isabella doesn't even flinch. She just calls it delightful with a straight face. The military wants more time to think about her compensation. Rottenberger promises her Camelot interests will stay safe after the war, straight from a directive by the king himself. She plays it cool with her fan, telling them not to sweat the small stuff. Camelot trade was small fry anyway, and she knows war brings even better business opportunities. Walking out of the meeting, she is already pitching more deals. She offers up 70,000 outdated Guise 61 rifles that are still a hot item overseas. Rain snapped and carriage rolling. Isabella can't help but laugh at how easily she is playing these military men. She reflects on how the deputy director is a genius at planning, but doesn't understand the first thing about her true motives. To him, she is just a greedy merchant looking for a good deal. Riding through the city, she admits they only see her that way because she played the part so well. Her real goal is finally within reach, and it won't be long now. Life used to be peaceful in the shop they built together. That all changed on a day that started like any other but ended in a sudden violent crash. Her husband was a kind and honest man who lived for his family and his small business. He was her whole world, working tirelessly just to build a future for the two of them. The peace didn't last once. The light elves brought their chaos and prejudice into the streets. A single moment of violence turned their normal day into a bloody tragedy that changed her life forever. They took everything from her, including the man she loved and the shop he died trying to protect. After decades of planning, her hatred has finally reached its boiling point. This is the real face of the Merchant Queen, and it is fueled by a grudge that has been simmering for a lifetime. Her assistant can feel the shift in energy, even if she doesn't know the dark history behind it. She quickly hides the rage behind a polite mask and gets back to work. The carriage rolls toward their next appointment as she prepares to use her wealth as a weapon of war. Elsewhere, Major General Eric Greven is stomping through the halls with a massive stack of intel in tow. This dude has been waiting his entire career for the moment the gears of destiny finally start turning. Everything started when he was just a kid with a major ambition. Back during the Deutner War, the headlines were screaming about a massive orc counterattack. Young Greven watched it all unfold, soaking up every bit of the hype. While other kids were doing normal stuff, he was commanding dirt armies with toy soldiers. His parents fueled the fire, and he spent every waking moment mastering the art of the tiny battlefield. That is when he learned that the world does not just have one right answer. He realized early on that there are a million ways to win if you're creative enough. The kid was a total genius in the classroom, but his attitude was a nightmare for his instructors. They kept telling him to cooperate even though he was already 10 steps ahead of everyone else. He told the doubters to stay mad and join the army as soon as he could. Before long, he was officially climbing the ranks as a staff officer. His unconventional brain turned out to be exactly what the military needed. The top brass started calling him a total genius and the secret weapon to winning the entire war. Seebeck even tried to play matchmaker by introducing him to General Schwerian's youngest daughter as a potential bride. The old man taught him the ways of the world, and Greven was so loyal he would have laid down his life for him. Back in the present, he spends every waking moment obsessing over maps provided by the Topography Bureau and Isabella Farron. Every inch of the enemy territory is now burned into his brain. A travelogue from a human woman who explored Elfind alone proved to be his most valuable source of intelligence. His aide watches from the doorway, wondering if the general is surviving entirely on a diet of coffee and cigars. After studying the official invasion strategy, he drops a massive reality check and declares that the entire plan is going to fail. If you ask Greven, the only thing that matters in this war is logistics. He is officially throwing out the old military playbook. In his mind, the front lines are just the final stop for the supply wagons. Drills have already proven that delays are practically a law of nature. You can't expect everything to arrive on time when the chaos starts. The strategy is to turn local granaries into supply hubs. Some of the troops are still skeptical about relying so heavily on the land. Procuring supplies on site only works if there is actually something to take. In a scorched earth scenario, the army is just going to starve. Greven cycles through every transport method from railroads to ships. Every single one of them is already pushed past its maximum capacity. The map of the peninsula reveals a geographical disaster. Between the roadless mountains and the lack of bridges, the whole region is a trap. Greven is officially done with the slow life. Building bridges and laying down railway tracks is going to take way too long for this invasion. He spots a massive shortcut on the map. The port of Falmeria is a commercial and military powerhouse, sitting just 70 kilometers away. The light bulb finally flickers on. The Navy guys are so protective of their warships at this port because they consider them their top hypothetical enemy. Our boy realizes he has been playing himself this whole time. He admits he is a total idiot for missing something this basic. The railroad is already connected from the port straight to the enemy capital. He was so focused on land tactics that he completely forgot about the ocean. The entire third floor turns into a total circus. Greven starts sprinting through the halls like a madman while his staff wonders if he has finally lost his mind. He sprints straight into the Topographical Bureau. He needs a massive favor from Chief Rotenberger, and he needs it right now. The staff is just vibing and waiting for that request result to drop. One officer is deep into a book while another keeps his tools ready. House arrest for the entire Operations Bureau was not on the bingo card. Papers are flying everywhere as the massive grind officially begins. The work is so intense it even draws in the naval staff from the building across the street. Nobody is safe from this sudden desk duty. The map highlights a major sea route through some seriously rough waters. This supply path is the big play they have been looking for. These northern seas are violent, even in the summer since there's no land to stop the wind. Our boy in the corner is screaming about how these junk ships are basically floating coffins. Check out the Cormoran-class gunboat, supposedly the dream warship of the Navy. It is stacked with torpedo tubes and heavy cannons to handle the rough seas. Lieutenant Commander Ernst Glindemann is lead of the Moe, and he is definitely not having a good time. His crew is part of the Scrap Iron Squadron, and they have been struggling since yesterday. Exercises went from 0 to 100 real quick when a whale decided to headbutt the cormoran. The crew was just vibing and laughing until that massive thud changed the mood. It was a long night of towing the damaged ships back to safety through the heavy waves. To make matters worse, the captain gets hit with the news that his own engine finally called it quits. Lieutenant Durenbalk finally spots the home port as they limp back with 240 beat sailors. They have finally reached the end of a very long night on the water. Sergeant Major Oscar Venus picks up a sudden flood of signals from every ship in the bay. It seems like the entire local fleet has been waiting for them to show their faces. The radio turns into a total roast session as the other ships spam jokes about them being junk metal. Despite the trash talk, the dock crew is out in full force to welcome the boys back home. Captain Glindeman just leans back and laughs at all the friendly fire coming through the comms. This exact kind of chaotic energy is why he refuses to quit the Navy. Back in his element, the captain orders Sergeant Major Venus to prep a broadcast for the entire rough seas fleet. They might be a mess, but they still have a job to do. The Scrap Iron Squadron reports in with nothing to share. This tiny fleet of only 26 ships basically makes up the whole Orkson Navy. Lieutenant Balk is finally asking the hard questions. He wonders if they actually have a prayer of winning when the odds are this bad. Captain Glindeman just laughs the concern off like it is a joke. He calls it a foolish question even as rumors of an elven war start getting serious. Side-by-side comparisons show just how cooked the orcs really are. The elves are superior in every way, especially with two legendary ships in their back pocket. Meet the ironclad Ryosta and the Svalta. These giant elven warships are the ultimate flex and represent the peak of naval power. Bought straight from Camelot, these beasts weigh in at over 9,000 tons. They outclass every orc vessel in every category that actually matters. Foreign experts claimed the orc fleet could sacrifice everything and still fail to sink this thing. To the rest of the world, the Orkson Navy is nothing more than a minor annoyance. Standing tall, the officer makes it official that this ragtag group is the scrap iron heart of the Orkson Navy. The captain is not backing down from any challenge. Their vessel sails on, ready to take care of whatever mission comes next. Scene shift to the summer of stellar calendar year 876. The whole country is on high alert. From the streets to the high command, everyone is bracing for the war that is clearly coming. Simple snacks and a bottle of the good stuff. The conflict they all saw coming is finally knocking at the door. Dainaru and Ria take a second to breathe before the chaos starts. They really thought they would have a bit more time to themselves. Back at command, Dainaru locks in as she reads over the fresh strategy proposal for the Elfind invasion. The general staff is moving fast. Plan number 6 is officially on the table and ready for the final sign-off. Seebeck intends to approve the draft shortly. Greven apparently put in a massive amount of work to make sure this version is airtight. They just need a name to tie the whole operation together. Dainaru looks through the archives and suggests Zilvan, which translates to Silver Tree. The title is locked in. It is a fitting name for a mission designed to cut down the Elven nation at its roots. King Gustav gives the final nod. Greven and Seebeck salute as the strategy officially transitions into Case Sylvan. The signatures are dried and the renaming is complete. They offer a final blessing for the homeland before the war machine starts rolling. Stellar calendar year 876. We are way up in the north at the Meltmare province of the Orkson Kingdom. Major General Gunther Blumenthal arrives at the Northern Army HQ, ready for another day of work. The guards snap to attention as the Chief of Staff makes his entrance. Blumenthal greets his boss, the legendary Colonel General Aloysius Schwerin. The old man is already at his desk, casually acknowledging the morning arrival. This dude is more than just a boss to Gunther, he is actually his father-in-law. Between the coffee and the paperwork, it looks like a standard morning for the military elite. To the rest of the world, Schwerin is a total beast on the battlefield. He is known as the fierce and uninhibited old man of the Orkson military who eats wars for breakfast. However, that whole terrifying warrior persona is actually just a massive act. Behind closed doors with family, he is a quiet and refined gentleman who just wants to read his paper in peace. He is a master of the double life, balancing brute force with total elegance. Blumenthal is locked in on a new project. It is a magic item management system sent over by the Logistics Bureau, and he is ready to master every detail. A dog orc officer explains the new initiative to Schwerin, proposing a field test at a major railway hub. They hope to optimize supply management straight from the cargo cars. Blumenthal starts taking notes immediately. Schwerin looks over the records, wondering how they built 5 new stations so fast. He heard the military budget was supposed to be empty after forming the Infanglia Brigade. Blumenthal reveals they funded the whole thing by secretly selling off surplus rifles, and the Army Ministry is not happy. General Bonin is apparently livid about the unauthorized side hustle. The old man finds the whole situation hilarious, pinning the blame on Greven. He decides to bribe the ministry with some high-end liquor to keep the peace. Schwerin agrees that a peace offering is a good idea. Looking at his mentor, Blumenthal realizes that surviving a century as an officer takes constant study and absolute discipline. In this era of rapid scientific advancement, just living a long time is not enough to stay active, even for near-immortal demon races. Our boy Schwerin is a low-key bookworm, finishing every single day with a story right next to his wife. Back in the day, he grew up without an education and did not even know his letters until he started leading armies. He moved past military history and now even reads original Camelot literature like he was born for it. He fell in love with that refined vibe during a trip to Camelot as the king's top attendant. His ultimate luxury is a glass of premium whiskey served over ice harvested straight from the northern mountains. Looking at his boss, the aide suggests that he should finally stop keeping this cultured side of himself a secret. Schwerin is out here dropping Shakespeare like he is a main character on Broadway. Grinning from ear to ear, he declares that all the world is a stage and everyone is merely a player. Apparently, his old spiked helmet was his favorite stage prop until the king shut that down. Lately, the veteran general has been struggling to find his groove without his signature look. Blumenthal asks why he does not just wear the helmet anyway, but Schwerin is too loyal for that. He clutches his gear and dramatically insists, I simply cannot. Just then, a package arrives straight from the king himself. It is a pair of top-tier dust-proof goggles for the upcoming campaign. The king's letter is pure hype, calling him his proudest fang and telling him to wrap those goggles around a field cap instead. Gustav promises they will meet again in the enemy capital, giving his veteran general a reason to keep pushing. Our boy is sobbing tears of joy, overwhelmed by the king's thoughtfulness. He cries out that he is grateful and immediately orders Blumenthal to prepare a frame for the letter. He ends up hanging the letter in his study like a sacred artifact, gazing at it every single day. Even though orcs do not really do religion, this message might as well be a divine relic to him. Schwerin is finally back in his element. He wraps the king's gift around his field cap and marches off to war with the full might of the kingdom behind him. A mysterious recruitment poster starts appearing in every corner of the capital. It is a direct call for brave kobolds to sign up for a high-stakes mission with an even higher payout. This strange notice popped up just before the summer of stellar calendar year 876. The local crowds can barely believe the strict physical requirements being demanded for the job. Elsewhere, in the southern outskirts of the capital, a series of brutal selection tests are carried out. The fresh recruits are beyond confused when they find themselves drafted into a temporary meteorological unit. The mission leads them straight to the Charliehof garrison, the legendary home base of the Eagle Corps. Massive predators swoop through the air with enough force to knock the breath out of the ground troops. The higher-ups have clearly cooked up an insane plan, and the reality hits home as the saddles come out. These kobolds never expected their military career to involve being sent flying into the sky. By late August, the time for training is over and the unit is officially airborne. This marks a historic moment for the kobold race as they finally take to the skies. Our boy Florian is living the dream, shouting about how this is a historic first for the kobold race. He finally gets to take to the sky and he is absolutely loving every second of it. Lieutenant Anton Dora gets a kick out of the rookie excitement, asking the kid if flying is really that much fun. Florian looks down at the landscape and wonders if even the king has ever seen the world from this high up. The lieutenant gets a bit daring, offering to zip right through the narrow supports of a bridge ahead. Florian immediately shuts it down, not wanting to get a lecture from the commander for doing something that reckless. It turns out the mission has some incredible perks, starting with a massive feast of high-quality meat. Florian is stoked to share in the Eagle's leftovers, which look better than anything he has ever eaten before. The squad is losing their minds over the marbled meat, savoring every single bite of the perfect prosciutto. One kobold is so impressed, he even plans on sending some of the premium salami back home to his mom. Major General Werner Reinders watches the group celebrate, noting to the professor that they seem to be enjoying themselves. He seems satisfied with the morale of his new aerial unit. Professor Meerschener Bernstein agrees, pointing out that Taubert in particular showed some serious aptitude during the selection process. The university professor looks on as her high-potential recruit takes flight. Reinders notes that while she might look like a regular kobold, the lady is actually a high-ranking university professor. She has been putting in overtime at the Army's request to handpick the best recruits for this new unit. The conversation shifts as a messenger brings word from the High Command. The General Staff has finally decided on an official designation for these airborne kobold soldiers. They are going with the title of pilot. The military logic is simple, treating the great eagles like massive ships, and the kobolds as their dedicated navigators. Markenner decides to shoot her shot and asks the general for a personal flight through the clouds. She even pushes for them to drop the stiff military titles and start using their first names. Reinders gets a kick out of the bold request from the young lady. He quickly catches himself and offers an apology for his rigid military response. The general lowers his head and officially welcomes her to his domain in the clouds. He hopes she finds the sky just as wonderful as he does. Elsewhere, the scene cuts to the industrial heart of Wissen in western Orkson. The loud banging of heavy machinery echoes through the air as a well-dressed man rushes toward a massive steel factory. West Regin, the company president, bursts into the room looking stressed out of his mind. He shouts for his father as he slams through the door with an urgent message. Inside, we meet the chairman, Willie Regin, who is busy putting in work at the forge. He barely looks up from his hammering to ask if his son is there to help him move some metal. West doesn't have time for the chairman's jokes and shoves the documents in his face. Willie is stunned to see an order for 300 ironclads, although the term confuses him. It turns out the military wants bridging materials for the engineering corps, but with a major twist. Instead of the usual wooden boats, they want the entire pontoon bridge made of solid iron. The orders just keep stacking up. On top of the bridges, they need specialized rifle manufacturing equipment, dozens of howitzers, and 12,000 shells. There's also a strange request for magical metal plates from the new continent. West points out how weird it is that 4,000 of these plates are being sent straight to the state railway. West starts crunching the numbers to see how they can possibly hit these targets. He estimates that with enough workers, it will take at least 2 more months to finish production. Willie is in full beast mode. He orders a total mobilization of every worker and makes these orders the top priority. He even threatens to knock heads off if a single defective product hits the line. West is totally lost and tries to argue that the deadline is still months away. Willie just calls him an idiot for not reading between the lines. This is a total expansion for war. Willie stares at the documents with an intensity that says he knows exactly what is coming. Beyond being a master engineer, Willie is a hardcore patriot who remembers the grit of the last war. He knows the nation is about to face its greatest enemy yet. 30 years of building the Vissel Company has led to this moment. When King Gustav called, Willie did not hesitate to put his entire legacy on the line for the kingdom. There is a dark reason for his fire. When the Elfine nation wiped out the dwarf lands, Willie lost his parents and everyone he loved in the flames. Elsewhere, the scene shifts to the jagged cliffs of Lindworm Cape. Just across the bay sits Falmalia, the enemy massive naval hub that most sailors are too terrified to even approach. 2 scholars from Wildschwein University arrive at Lindworm Cape, posing as marine biologists to study the local sea life. Little do the villagers know, these guys are actually elite agents here for something much more secret. They set up a base on the Cape, officially tracking whales and dolphins to keep their cover. The professor stays glued to his binoculars, keeping a sharp eye on the bay for any sign of enemy movement. The nephew makes regular trips into town for supplies and some quick business at the post office. He sends out a coded telegram about going out while collecting a message of his own from the clerk. The clerk hands over a telegram about his mother's health, and the guy just sighs. He says he would love to head back, but his university research is just too important to leave behind right now. Down at the local pub, the fishermen talk about how much respect they have for these hard-working scholars. They appreciate the generous pay and think these university types really have it rough. The locals recall taking the researchers out into Belafalis Bay for their whale surveys. They did not think much of it at the time, even when the boat ventured deep into sensitive waters. Helping the researchers measure water depths turned out to be a goldmine for the fishermen. They are stoked about the fat stack of cash they got, completely unaware they just helped map an invasion path. The undercover duo refuels over a greasy burger while analyzing the enemy fleet's lack of training. It looks like the Elfine vessels are way less active than anyone expected. One of them comments on how chill the Navy is acting lately. His buddy just laughs, saying they do not even come close to the grind the Army is dealing with. This guy is actually a major in the Geodetic Survey Department, using a professor's identity as cover. He knows the mission is brutal, but with diplomatic tensions at a breaking point, they have zero choice but to keep going. His assistant is secretly a naval captain who is clearly feeling the pressure. For him, this is a mission with no end in sight. Their whale-watching cover story was a total lie. In reality, they were documenting every single move of the elfin naval vessels under the cover of night. Back at the National Army General Staff, the vibe is strictly business. This building is the nerve center where all the secret intel finally gets processed. The president of a major steamship company just found out the government is legally snatching his entire fleet for the war effort. He can barely process the news while the generals look on. Grevin gets straight to the point and demands 17 ships from the company. He is not just asking, he is telling the president how it is going to be. A forgotten law from the Deutner War gives the military control over domestic merchant ships. In times of war, the Navy is the boss of every civilian vessel in the country. The president stammers out a hesitant yes, though he is clearly overwhelmed by the situation. Grevin ignores the nerves and asks for the fastest assembly time at any domestic port. Rounding up the fleet will take anywhere from 3 days to 2 weeks at the very most. The pressure is on as the president tries to guess the true purpose of this military move. Our guy keeps the mission top secret and refuses to give out any details for security reasons. He only explains that this move will finally resolve the nation's biggest problem. The president understands and decides to approve the order on his own authority without even calling the board. He makes a solemn promise not to leak this secret to a single soul. Grevin realizes the man is fully on his side now. The president admits he has waited his entire life for a day like this. This old vet is dropping some heavy trauma about the Battle of Rosalind. He admits he was the only sailor to survive while all his brothers went down with the ship, and the mood is just pure pain. Cut to Autumn and Orkson. Daineru is geared up and waiting at the firing range because Gustav promised to show her a major flex. Senior General Zeton is being peak stubborn about military etiquette. He refuses to take a seat while the king is standing, even with his aide practically begging him to chill. Major General Grevin arrives on the scene while Daineru holds her salute. The old general finally stops being a brick wall and gets ready for the demonstration. Gustav tells the old man to just keep his eyes peeled because he is about to be impressed. Daineru is all ears, wondering what kind of hardware they are testing today. The carriage finally rattles in with the goods. Lieutenant Colonels Railnor and Arwen are on the sidelines, eyes locked on the arriving equipment. Lavarasu takes one look at the cargo and notices something is up. It looks like a standard mountain gun at first glance, but the proportions are way too massive. Schwerin gives the signal to unleash the beast. He tells them to begin as the soldiers lock in and prepare to show off their latest technological terror. The crank starts turning and the gun begins its terrifying song. Every single observer is glued to their binoculars as they try to process the storm of lead. Total destruction in the blink of an eye. The target board is erased from existence as the storm of bullets shreds wood like it is wet paper. Daineru looks like she has seen a ghost while Schwerin watches on with a grim grin. The reality of modern warfare just hit them like a physical punch to the gut. The officer officially introduces the Gluckston Ring-type machine gun Model 76. A heavy silence falls over the crowd as the true power of this weapon finally sinks in. The elven ranks are in a state of pure shock as they mutter among themselves. The vibe is dead because seeing a weapon this lethal is the opposite of funny. She stares at the carnage with a face full of cold dread. This is the moment she realizes the old ways of fighting are over, and things are about to get very real. Starting with a heavy history lesson on this beast, a doctor from the north built it 10 years ago during a civil war. Daineru is floored by the origin story. She can't believe a medic would design something this lethal. The military modified the weapon to fire standard rifle rounds and secured the rights while other nations ignored the tech. The realization hits hard. With firepower like this on the field, the entire cavalry branch is dead weight. Cavalry was already on the way out? Even back then, a single charge usually meant losing almost every horse. Infantry started using the square formation to turn the battlefield into a wall of bayonets and lead. The age of the elite rider is over. No amount of speed can punch through these new defensive lines. Industrial production went into overdrive. High-performance rifles and advanced artillery started rolling off the assembly lines as the military machine evolved. The humans ended up creating a monster of a weapon. Even from a demon's perspective, this thing is terrifying and completely changes the game. Gustav isn't ready to count the cavalry out just yet. He doesn't think such a legendary force would just become useless overnight. The strategy is simple. He wants to stop thinking of cavalry as a blunt assault force and start using them for pure mobility. They flank the enemy, dismount, and then open fire with all that new hardware. They only charge once the enemy is already broken. One of the officers is clearly losing it over this radical shift in tradition. The officer shouts that this isn't even cavalry anymore. He calls it out for what it actually is, just mounted infantry, and the realization is hitting the whole room hard. Gustav doesn't blink. He confirms that the choice is simple. Either they adapt to this new role or they won't survive the next war. Our girl Daineru realizes the king isn't sugarcoating it. He is calling the legendary cavalry charge a romantic fantasy that has no place in the future of warfare. Gustav breaks down how these lightweight machine guns are actually the perfect fit for cavalry mobility. General Schwerin is sweating, finally realizing the old-school tactics are completely cooked. Watching Gustav console a shaken soldier, Daineru sees the man behind the crown. He has spent a literal century patiently dragging everyone into the future, one mind at a time. The kingdom's agricultural stations are living proof of his long-term strategy. Innovation always kicks off with confusion and resistance before it finally changes the world. She gets it now. Building a nation isn't a fairy tale. It is a slow, gritty process of convincing people to let go of the past and step into the new era. Time to level up. Gustav officially puts Daineru in charge of 6 machine gun units and tells her to master the tech, because the battlefield is about to change forever. A sharp salute and a firm promise. Our MC is ready to take this new power and run with it. A few days later, Senior General Zeton drops a bombshell by declining his new command. He wants a younger officer to take his place, and Gustav is clearly reading the letter with a heavy heart. The king is not having it. He slams the table and calls the general a stubborn old man while Daineru watches the outburst from the side. No time for sitting around. Our boy tells Daineru to follow him and head straight for the door to handle this personally. They arrive at a quiet residence in the old district of the capital. This is where the legendary veteran has been keeping to himself. Gustav doesn't bother with small talk. He barges in and immediately asks Zeton if his rheumatism is the real reason he is quitting. The general admits his health is definitely a factor. It turns out this specific illness is a total nightmare for long-lived races like orcs. Decades of being a heavy cavalryman have finally broken his body. Even the best magic elixirs can't fix the damage that comes from centuries of service. Zeton admits he is finished. Seeing the new machine guns in action proved he can no longer keep up with modern war. He is worried about dragging the army down if he stays in command. Our boy just listens, absorbing the weight of the veteran's retirement. The mood shifts as Zeton starts getting sentimental. He has nothing but gratitude for the way Gustav changed their lives. Flashback to the struggle years before the king arrived. The orcs were living in straw huts and eating scraps. The grind was real. Straw turned to logs, and logs eventually became solid brick as the nation evolved. Nowadays, they have proper roofs over their heads and zero worries about where their next meal is coming from. A heavy show of respect for the man who saved their race. He knows they would still be in the mud without Gustav's guidance. Zeton shakes his head at the table, refusing to accept any more kindness. He starts getting emotional thinking about all the suffering our boy has gone through to save their people. He bows low, trembling as he claims no amount of thanks could repay the debt he feels, begging our boy to let him go. The veteran completely breaks down in tears. Gustav isn't having it though, calling him a stubborn fool for trying to walk away now. Daenerys stays quiet in the back, but her sharp elven ears catch every single word of the general's emotional breakdown. Gustav stands up and lays out the new reality. He whispers that the staff will handle the work, and Zeton just needs to be the legend at the top. The old soldier is absolutely floored by the suggestion, staring at Gustav with wide eyes as his brain struggles to compute the plan. With a look of pure resolve, Gustav confirms he is dead serious. He puts a hand on the veteran's shoulder and promises that this impossible move is the only way forward. Gustav lays it all on the line, asking the veteran legends to stand by his side for the upcoming war. The request hits home, and the old general is moved to actual tears by the king's respect. Zeton pledges his life to the cause, swearing to follow Gustav even if he has to crawl. Cut to a carriage rolling through the city with Daenerys riding inside in her full uniform. The vibe inside is super heavy as Gustav stays silent, staring out at the scenery. Daenerys watches him from across the seat, feeling a weird tension that she is almost afraid to name. She reflects on their intimate connection, realizing that despite how close they have become, a massive emotional gap still remains between them. The silence in the carriage is deafening, making the distance between them feel a mile wide. Suddenly, Gustav spots something outside and orders the driver to slam on the brakes. Our boy practically jumps out of the moving carriage, leaving Daenerys staring in pure confusion. He tells her to wait right there, promising to grab her a treat as he sprints off into the distance. Daenerys can only watch from the carriage door as the leader of the nation pulls a full Olympic sprint toward a street vendor. He reaches a little steam-powered food cart, looking hyped to finally get his hands on some local snacks. Gustav hops back into the carriage door, looking like he just won the lottery. Daenerys can only watch in total confusion as the king basically teleports back to his seat while clutching a mysterious, steaming bag. Our boy is radiating pure hype as he offers the snacks, insisting they are a must-try. He has to keep them moving in his hands, though, because they are still piping hot and fresh off the vendor cart. Revealing the prize, he spills the secret of the oversized roasted acorns as a local specialty. Daenerys looks absolutely floored, her brain struggling to compute why the king is trying to feed her something she thinks is poisonous. As they roll away, she immediately starts listing every reason why this is a bad idea. To her, acorns are just bitter forest scraps that are toxic to anyone who is not an orc. A confident look from the king says it all as he holds one up like a gourmet delicacy. He promises her they have been a safe Orcsan staple for generations and reminds her that he would never lie about anything involving food. Giving in at last, Daenerys takes a piece and goes for a cautious bite. The chomp is surprisingly crisp, and she holds her breath while waiting for the flavor to hit. The shock on her face says it all as a wave of rich, earthy sweetness takes over. It is like a blessing from the ground itself, hitting her with a warm, roasted aroma that is actually amazing. Gustav is hyped to see his plan working as Daenerys finally admits these roasted acorns are fire. He is acting like a proud dad at this point, encouraging her to keep going. But there's a minor skill issue. The shells are way tougher than they look. Daenerys is staring at the nut like it is some kind of high-level puzzle box she cannot crack. Gustav just laughs and tells her to drop the royal act. He gives her the green light to eat, like no one is watching, because they are just chilling in their own world. Our girl finally lets loose and just goes for it, her face lighting up as that rich sweetness hits. It is a flavor explosion that has her rethinking everything she knew about orc food. To wash it all down, Gustav breaks out a bottle of white wine for the ultimate combo. He is dropping pro tips on why spirits are a skip, and wine is the only way to go with this snack. These market stalls are built different, using magical containers to keep the drinks at the perfect temp. Whether you want a full bottle or just a quick glass, they have got you covered. One sip and Dinaru is in heaven, the cheap wine pairing perfectly with the earthy acorns. Her face is radiating pure delight as the flavors smoothly slide down her throat. Gustav laughs, pouring more wine as he explains that in Orkson, these snacks are a peak autumn tradition for everyone. Daineru takes a sip, her mind blown that something this good was right under her nose the whole time. He starts hyping up the October Harvest Festival, where the whole nation goes hard. It is a massive vibe with traditional fits, adults getting lit on beer, and kids running wild through the market stalls. During festival season, the trees are decked out in flags matching the national colors. Daineru suddenly spots something out the window and lets out a gasp as the pieces start connecting. She asks if all those street trees were planted just for the party vibes. Gustav admits that while they serve the festival now, they were actually grown for a much darker reason. Holding up a single acorn, he reveals his backup plan for the worst-case scenario. These trees are a famine safety net planted so the people would never starve even if his government caught a massive loss. He admits it is a bit of a waste to let them rot on the ground now, but he is not even mad to him. Every rotting acorn is proof that his rule is going smooth and his people are well fed. Daineru looks at him with a whole new level of respect, realizing he has been playing the long game for over a century. From building huts to brick houses, she sees the sheer dedication this man has for his kingdom. Daineru is officially all in. She is tossing her doubts aside to fully back the man who changed her life. There is no turning back now. She is sticking by Gustav's side until the very end. Elsewhere, the carriage rolls out as the world hits a point of no return. History is being made right before our eyes. Back at the royal residence, October 13th brings a shift in the air. Camelot enters the chat. Special envoy Sir Martin George Aston and Ambassador Claude Maxwell have arrived for business. Gustav is keeping it professional. He welcomes the visitors with the usual diplomatic small talk. They settle in for a chat over some tea. Starting off with book talk is a classic way to break the ice. Aston is geeking out over a book, comparing it to the great natural history. Gustav is just playing the part of the polite host. Turns out our boy Aston is a top-tier researcher of demonic races in Star Europe. He and Gustav are basically library buddies who trade rare books like they are collector cards. The mood shifts as Aston presents a sealed envelope straight from the elfin government. This is a personal letter from their queen to the king of Orkson. The Orkson team had been applying diplomatic pressure for a while, and this is the reply they finally managed to squeeze out. Gustav looks at the document with a heavy gaze. The staff expected the usual diplomatic dance where letters go back and forth for a whole year. It is a slow game of back and forth that usually buys everyone time. The generals are already calculating with the army preferring summer starts, and the navy needing a year for their new ships. Gustav just breaks the seal. Now then, let's see what they have to say. The letter is surprisingly short, written in both Elvish and the Camelot language. It demands that Orksons stay out of their internal affairs without a single mention of the Dark Elf massacre. They even want this guarantee in writing. Gustav scans the letter and finds zero mention of the Dark Elf massacre. Typical light elf move, hiding their crimes behind fancy wordplay. Clemens Bulow watches as the king reads the final demand. The elves want a formal pledge that Orkson will never step foot in the Sylvan River Basin again. Our boy is straight up livid. These fools just made a mistake they are going to regret for the rest of their lives. They were so overconfident they wrote the letter in 2 languages just to mock the orcs. They have spent way too much time hiding in their own borders, and it shows. Diplomacy is a high-stakes game of words, and Elfin just made a fatal error. By claiming the entire basin, they just tried to steal actual Orkson territory. Gustav is vibrating with rage while the envoys watch in silence. This level of insolence is beyond anything he expected. He shoves the letter toward the envoy and asks if this is actually supposed to be an official document. He is done with this level of disrespect. Bulow is straight up losing his mind over this letter. He can't believe the elves had the audacity to demand they hand over their own territory in writing. Sir Martin Aston is sweating bullets as the tension hits a breaking point. After a century of diplomacy, even he's never seen a country commit such a massive blunder. The envoys don't stick around to chat. They scramble into their carriage and bolt before the building literally explodes with rage. Gustav has officially entered demon mode. He's staring at that paper like he's about to devour the person who wrote it. The rage suddenly turns into a cold, terrifying grin. This isn't just an insult. It's the perfect legal excuse for war they've been hunting for. No more talking. Gustav starts barking out orders to mobilize his top messengers and bodyguards immediately. The heavy hitters are clocking in. General Siebeck, Erich Greven, and Admiral Kunersdorf are all called to the front as the war machine begins to turn. The top brass is crunching the numbers, and despite the bad timing, they are confident they can still pull off a major operation. The Navy is feeling the pressure since their newest ships are not combat ready, but the Army is already itching to move out. Gustav looks over the war map and makes the call that changes everything. No more talking and no more diplomacy. It is officially time for war to begin. A single word is blasted out across every military headquarters in the nation. This tiny message carries the weight of history, and every soldier receiving it knows exactly what they have to do. The gears of the Orcsan war machine are finally turning as they officially launch the invasion of Elfland. Every branch of the military is locked in and ready to unleash hell on the kingdom that mocked them. There is no more turning back now. Their eyes are fixed on a single target, and they are marching straight for the Elfine border with everything they have got. We kicks off with a look back at what the General Staff calls the accursed 12 days. It is the legendary period of time that is about to change the map forever. Everything is built on Invasion Plan Number 6, a high-stakes blueprint designed specifically for the showdown with the elves. We are talking about moving 500,000 troops across the country in just 12 days, which is massive for logistics. When the rest of the world finally hears about this speed, their military leaders are going to be absolutely floored. It is the kind of efficiency that leaves every other general on the planet questioning their entire career. To put it in perspective, a neighboring nation took 4 whole months to move a similar force 15 years ago. Orcsan is basically doing in a week and a half what others could not finish in a season. The plan is to keep everything a secret to ensure Elfin never sees it coming. They are moving slow and steady on the surface, waiting for the perfect moment to launch a surprise attack. On the political side, Orcsan is keeping the diplomatic letter a secret from the public to maintain a facade of peace. This move has foreign ministries like Camelot thinking there is still room for talk, unaware that the gears of war are already spinning. The massive troop movement is officially being framed as just another routine military exercise. While the soldiers know it is a real call-up order, the public thinks it is just the usual yearly training. Our girl Daineru is out here riding while the leaves fall. Reflecting on the heavy moves being made behind the scenes, she was wondering what her own man, King Gustav, was really doing during this critical stretch of time. Right in the heart of those legendary 12 days, she went to pay her respects to the king. This was a professional visit in her role as the commander of the Infanglia Brigade. As she marched past the guards into the residence, she kept her focus sharp and her heart locked down. Their private goodbye as lovers had already happened days ago, and now it was purely about the mission. That farewell had been intense, a firestorm of passion that felt like it could turn them both to ash. It was the kind of heat that stays with you long after you have stepped onto the battlefield. They held onto each other like they were trying to memorize every single detail, desperate to soak up every moment before the war tore them apart. It was raw, honest, and all-consuming. Gustav knew she was not the type to be moved by shallow sweet talk, especially not now. Their bond had reached a point where they understood exactly where they stood without needing to say a word. Now her transition to the vanguard is complete as she takes her place at the front of the line. Her job is to lead the charge and be the very first one to smash through the border defenses. Felix notices some new drip on her arm and can't help but ask what it is. Blushing slightly, Diniru explains it is a wristwatch that she received as a gift from the king. Felix is happy to see the sign of royal favor, while she notes how useful it is for coordinating cavalry moves. To her, the watch is a symbol of her duty to lead the charge as one of the king's fangs. She walks into the library to find Gustav casually reading while Advin naps, looking completely unbothered by the war. Seeing him so unfazed is peak reassurance, and she can't help but laugh at his calm demeanor. Just as she is about to head out, Gustav stops her to hand over a book. Gustav hands her a book and tells her to put it back on the shelf once she is done reading. It is a collection of old folktales that Diniru has been low-key curious about for quite some time. She gracefully accepts the gift while Advin continues his nap in the background. Gustav goes back to his own book as she heads out to prepare for the coming invasion. 12 days before the main event, the scene shifts to the harbor on October 14th. Every squadron commander and ship captain is ordered to assemble for an immediate briefing. Over at the Grosshafen naval base, the reality of the situation finally starts to sink in for the crew of the flagship Lovi. The atmosphere is tense as the officers realize this is definitely not a drill. Admiral Maximilian Reuter is not feeling the nervous energy and asks the room if they have a problem. The commander of the Rough Sea Fleet does not look like he has any patience for second-guessing. When one of the officers tries to voice their concern, the admiral shuts it down instantly. He reminds them that fighting their archenemy is the very reason they dedicated their lives to the service. Admiral Reuter makes it official, ordering the fleet to get ready for the real deal. The squad doesn't sweat it though, immediately saluting before hitting the barrels and clinking mugs for a massive pre-battle toast. Morale is through the roof as the crew plans their post-landing drinking spree. This ironclad is a fortress on the water, surrounded by rowboats full of motivated sailors ready to cross the sea. Admiral Reuter pulls his chief of staff aside as the gravity of the mission finally settles in. Looking out over the harbor, the admiral knows the stakes are high. If they're going down, they're making sure to drag the enemy's best ships into the depths with them. Over on the gunboat Mo, Lieutenant Colonel Glindeman and his gunner Durin are locked in. These two are the veterans of the Scrap Iron Squadron, and they aren't here to play around. Things aren't looking great at the docks though, with the crew questioning if the Coromoran can even get moving. Chief Engineer Holman is busy venting about the garbage tier coal they've been stuck with. Just as they start blaming the Navy's empty wallet, a ship appears on the horizon with a solution. All hands on deck because the collier finally pulled up. Time to get those coaling operations moving. The crew is putting in work to load her up to max capacity. More shipments are already rolling in on the tracks to keep the momentum going. Meanwhile, the gunboat Cormoran officially joins back up with the Scrap Iron Squadron. That very same day, the Army triggers the first phase of its military mobilization. It is pure chaos inside the transport cars, as everyone fights for a bit of legroom. Our boys are definitely feeling the struggle of being packed into freight cars. A heavy steam engine pulls the long line of cars toward the border. The reality of heading north starts to sink in when they remember winter gear was mandatory. The long haul is starting to take its toll on everyone. Between the shivering horses and the thick soot, catching some sleep is basically impossible. The train pulls up to a water tower for a quick refuel, giving the engine a much-needed break while the troops stay put. Everyone is starting to cramp up in the cargo cars, but the sergeant isn't taking any excuses, telling the boys to stand up and do some squats to keep the blood flowing. The mood pulls a total 180 when the catering finally arrives and the hype for a real meal reaches a fever pitch. It's not just basic rations either, as the boys get loaded up with hearty fatty soup, hardtack, and fire liquor to stay warm. Cut to dawn near the border town of Hugelberg, where the scene is quiet, but the work on the railway is already in full swing. Track maintenance is an art form for these guys, with veteran workers spotting tiny dips in the rail just by eyeballing the level. The crew gets to work with their pickaxes, hammering away to make sure the tracks are perfect for the heavy military loads heading north. The crew takes a breather as the morning air fills with the scent of a fresh cookout. Everyone is hyped for breakfast while the work on the tracks continues. Check out the Field Chef special. They are using a polished work shovel as a makeshift griddle for sausages and eggs, a classic move passed down from locomotive drivers. The foreman offers to load up another plate while the rest of the crew waits their turn. Simple comforts like a hot meal make the long hours manageable. One of the veterans is beyond impressed with the cooking. He tells the foreman he is destined for greatness, even if the boss thinks he is overreacting. Most high and mighty engineers wouldn't be caught dead eating with the crew, but the foreman actually values their expertise. The veteran sees the real spirit of the railway in him as he quietly sips his coffee. Someone asks about the train that makes 6 military transports in a row, all heading to the same spot. The foreman warns everyone to keep their heads down and their mouths shut about the troop movement. The troops are starting to realize this is way bigger than a standard drill. Looking at the sheer number of tents and troops, they start whispering about whether this is actually just an exercise. The realization hits hard when the word finally drops. It is war, and the whole atmosphere shifts as officers mount up and the ranks snap into a salute. Word spreads fast through the columns as the trains haul a massive amount of gear toward the front. After years of tension, they are finally moving out to settle the score with Elf. The departure is a whole event with a full brass band and crowds cheering from the sidelines. Soldiers lean out of the train cars, waving flags while the locomotive pulls away. Over in the dark elf settlement of Walderberg, things are usually quiet for farm girls like Gultina. Her peaceful day gets wrecked when the military calls for an immediate assembly of every available soul. The town is in chaos as soldiers sprint through the streets. Gultina manages to spot Sigurd in the crowd and scrambles to find out what is going on. Sigurd breaks the news that this is not just a drill. While the higher-ups call it a mobilization exercise, the tension in the air says otherwise. Narina pulls Gultina into a tight hug and tells her to take care of the farm. Our girl is clearly losing it as her friend prepares to head out to the front lines. Narina offers one last smile before saying she has to go. As the soldiers move out, a heavy sense of destiny fills the air in the village. This is the moment of payback the Dark Elves have been waiting for since their original home was destroyed. Gultina watches the departure with a mixture of fear and determination. Narina is stunned by the massive pile of supplies Gultina is trying to hand over. It is a literal mountain of carrots and produce for the long journey ahead. Gultina insists that she take every last bit with her to support the troops. Gultina holds her friend with a shaky grip and promises to keep the food shipments coming. She vows to grow as much wheat as possible to make sure no one goes hungry. Narina just smiles and offers a quiet thanks for the support. Through a mess of tears, Gultina shouts that she will be waiting right here in Walderberg. She makes Narina promise that they will visit the capital together once the fighting is finally done. Narina agrees with a confident grin as she finally turns to leave. By the time early summer rolls around, the Dark Elves have fully settled into their new territory. They have finally managed to find some breathing room and build a stable life for themselves. The fields are thriving, and the community is stronger than ever. A couple of girls catch a ride in a carriage and start gossiping about a legendary cafe in the city. They have heard stories about an exceptionally delicious orange sherbet served near the royal residence. Even though they have no idea what sherbet actually is, they are already sold on the hype. The girls finally made it to the capital, and their first stop is the legendary IDK Cafe. They've been gossiping about this place forever, and now they're standing right in front of it. The star of the show arrives, a massive orange sherbet that looks way too good to be true. One look at those scoops, and our girls are basically seeing stars. This isn't your average snack. It's made from actual northern ice and packed with premium orange pulp, creating the ultimate luxury dessert. One bite in, and they're officially obsessed with the sweet, refreshing vibe. They sit back and soak in every second of this rare moment of peace. They're already planning a return trip with the whole squad, even joking about how Sigurd would react. But the dream cut is sharp as reality hits, and the girls hold on to each other for a final goodbye hug. The streets are packed with people cheering for the soldiers as they prepare to move out. Gultina watches from the sidelines, her heart heavy as the reality of the war finally sets in. The cavalry rolls out in a grand parade through the cheering city. Narina catches one last look at her friend from the back of her horse before the column moves toward the front lines. Narina heads out for the front lines with a final salute, leaving the village's future to those staying behind. Our girl Gultina gives a heavy nod, feeling the sudden weight of the war as her friend departs. Whether they were ready for it or not, the clock just ran out for every person in the kingdom. The total mobilization has begun, and the war against Elfind is officially a reality. In the span of just 12 days, a massive force scrambled to the border to prepare for the invasion. We're talking nearly 500,000 personnel ready to push across a 260-kilometer front. It's easy to look at them as just a massive number on a map, but every single soldier has their own life story. People from every race are putting their normal lives on hold to step into the fire together. Legendary generals who've spent their whole lives in uniform are leading the charge into the unknown. Right beside them are green staff officers fresh out of college, catching whatever sleep they can get before the storm hits. The draft turned regular school teachers and post office workers into tactical experts overnight. From weather-watching eagles to magic comms officers, everyone is finding their place in the war machine. The ranks are packed with everyone from scary-faced sergeants to the local guy who used to run a sausage cart. Even the toughest-looking corporals are really just kind-hearted dudes doing what has to be done for their country. Every soldier in this line has a past life, ranging from shop owners to neighborhood fixers. Even the gear is prepped for the long haul, with wagons loaded up with ammo and supplies. Those field guns were nothing but raw iron and wood just a few years ago. Now they are being loaded onto trains by railway workers for the journey to the front. Craftsmen are putting in the hours to make sure these artillery shells are perfect. Every single rifle cartridge gets a careful look before it is cleared for the field. These war horses were brought across the sea and raised with peak care for this very moment. The entire movement is being coordinated with absolute precision to keep things on track. These wagons are built so well, they will probably be used by local farmers for decades after the fighting stops. It is a massive deployment that looks like chaos, but everything is moving according to plan. This is the reality of a national military force when it finally mobilizes. From the generals down to the marching ranks, everyone is geared up and ready for the mission. An army this size does not just spawn onto the map like a magic trick. It is not something that simply materializes, but the result of a crazy amount of logistics and prep. The answer is a hard no. Looking at their faces, it is clear there is zero room for negotiation. October 19th, year 8076. A steam train cuts through the landscape as the clock starts ticking on a new chapter. We are officially 7 days out from the start of the invasion. Inside the carriages, the dark elf soldiers are locked in and ready for what is coming. Daineru watches the world fly by from her seat. The Infangila Brigade is officially on the move, and the mobilization is finally in full swing. One day later at the royal residence, Major Dambits checks in with the boss. It is 6 days before the big day, and it is finally time to hit the road. Our boy Gustav is looking sharp as ever in his suit. He keeps it brief and simply agrees that it is time to move. The King of Orkson is officially beginning his own journey to the front. As he passes through the gates, the soldiers cannot help but stop and salute their leader. To keep things low-key, he slips out through the rear gate of the residence. After a quick ride, he swaps his wagon for a mid-sized carriage at the station behind the Ministry of Agriculture. After switching carriages at the ministry, he proceeded directly toward the capital training grounds. They reached the southernmost track where the steam engines waited, and he took a moment to straighten his collar for the next leg of the trip. Gustav stood firm on the platform as a massive cloud of steam hissed from the idling locomotive. He gave his aide a knowing look, asking if the man really failed to understand why they had taken such a detour through the city. Dropping the enigmatic act, the king offered a playful wink and a wide grin. He casually admitted he only chose to swap vehicles because he thought it would be amusing. His staff could only offer a confused response, completely outplayed by the king's unexpected sense of humor. Backing up to the previous day at the palace, there was actually a far more strategic reason for his high spirits. Steinmetz, the president of the university, had been practically shouting about the rising heat in the capital. He reported that hardline professors were already stirring up the youth to demand that Elfind be punished, and he urged the king to make a final decision immediately. The old academic even broke down into tears, offering to lay his own bones in the fertile land of the front lines as a spearhead for the invasion. Gustav listened calmly to the man's desperate and patriotic plea. Realizing the public's thirst for war was working perfectly in his favor, the king noted that their information security was holding up well. With everything in place, he finally stepped onto the royal train to lead his forces to the border. Enter the Sentry Star, the absolute peak of Orkson engineering and the king's personal transport. This high-speed beast is built for raw power, running on specialized broad-gauge tracks that put other nations to shame. It is an 8-car train set that is basically a rolling palace, complete with marble bathrooms and a piano in the observation car. No expense was spared for comfort, as every car features magic air conditioning and a dedicated kitchen for a master chef. Gustav relaxes in his private cabin, keeping the mysterious secret behind the train's name entirely to himself. The quiet moment ends as a pair of dark elf soldiers arrive at the door to address their king. Daineru officially presents her elite squad of 26 personnel who will serve as the king's personal bodyguards for the duration of the war. Daineru introduces her hand-picked elite squad, the top 3 soldiers who survived the Sylvan River escape. These girls are literal aimbots who can snipe the center of a playing card from 20 paces away without breaking a sweat. Gustav notices their unique red glasses while Daineru sets the ground rules. They are trained to drop any threat instantly and will act as a human shield for their king. Our boy finally gets some rest and passes out with a massive snot bubble. The elite guards stay on duty, keeping a 24-hour rotation while he is asleep. Daineru leans in for a private whisper, telling the king she has one more warning just in case. Gustav looks surprised, wondering why the vibe just changed. She is not playing around and promises to tear him to pieces if he gets out of line. Her face says she is ready to crash out right now. She warns him that her guards would rather die than betray her trust. If he tries to pull any moves on their private lives, things are going to get messy. Daineru is going full savage mode. She warns the king that she will hunt him down to the ends of hell, or even a latrine if he steps out of line. Our boy is actually into it. Instead of being terrified, he is blushing and happily agrees to whatever she says. He thinks being henpecked by a fussy, short-tempered wife type is not a bad deal. Daineru just stares back, completely lost by his weird reaction. Even the elite guards can see the vibes are off. They watch from the shadows, realizing their king might have some very specific tastes. The Sentry Star quietly pulls out of the station without a single soul there to watch. It is a secret departure to kick off the invasion in total silence. Before heading out, Gustav leaves the heavy lifting to his top ministers. Theodore Rahn handles the home front while Bülow manages the diplomatic mess. A formal declaration of war is delivered just 2 hours before the fighting starts. Gustav decides to do things the right way and asks Camelot to handle the handoff to Elfhind. Griffin is low-key crashing out about losing the element of surprise, but a raised hand from the king settles the vibe. It is time for a little lesson in Orkson class. Our boy breaks it down, explaining that a declaration of war is basically just a high-stakes duel invitation. Skipping the formalities would be a major L for their spirit of chivalry. Regardless of how much they hate the enemy, this invasion is being done by the book. A surprise attack would leave a permanent stain on the kingdom's history. 2 hours' notice turns out to be the sweet spot. It is enough to keep their honor intact, but not enough time for Elfhind to actually lock in and do anything. Diplomats love to yap, and a casual tea session provides the perfect cover for a little information exchange. Once that letter drops, the small talk is going to get real interesting. Griffin finally gets the math and agrees to the 2-hour window. Gustav just goes back to his book like he did not just drop a whole tactical masterclass. Griffin tries to push his luck by suggesting just 1 hour, but the king shuts it down immediately. Any little delay or extra yap sessions would ruin the timing. Gustav is already thinking about the snacks for the road trip, specifically a legendary egg cheesecake. He orders Danbits to grab enough for the whole squad when they hit the next station. Danbits starts sweating, worrying that the king's snack run might actually catch some heat from the Dark Elf Brigade commander. He basically asks if our boy is ready to face Daineru's wrath over some pastries. The question actually trips Gustav up, leaving him stunned as he realizes pastries might be more stressful than actual international politics. He tries to play it cool, but even he is not sure if he will survive Daineru's judgment. Fast forward 4 days before the big invasion, and the scene shifts to the quiet Meltmere province under the cover of night. The main army under Schwerin has already cleared out, leaving their old facilities ready for the next phase. The rear logistics headquarters for Operation Zilvan is officially in business, and the place is absolutely buzzing. Everyone is locked in, moving mountains of paperwork to keep the war machine fed and fueled. The man running the show is Major General Jirim Keat, a dwarf with a legendary mustache and a hunger for more than just victory. As the former logistics chief, he's the one making sure every single bullet and loaf of bread is exactly where it needs to be. According to the staff, the entire mobilization has been a total breeze so far. The vibes are high as they report that everything is moving right on schedule. Gira makes it clear that even the top brass and the king himself are at the mercy of his logistics squad. The officers check in on the supplies for the Dark Elf Brigade. Despite some salty comments, everything is confirmed to be ready for action. Turns out our boy is a total railway nerd. He spent 2 years perfecting train schedules and signaling systems to keep the war machine moving without a hitch. Now, the entire weight of the supply chain rests on his shoulders. He drops the #1 rule: never send in more than the system can actually handle. He breaks down the flow from hub stations to the front lines. One wrong move, and the whole operation turns into a massive traffic jam. It all boils down to cargo handling. If the crew can't unload and sort the gear efficiently, the entire push is basically meaningless. Finally, he pivots to the secret weapon they have been cooking up. It is time to roll out the magical inventory management system. The magic inventory system is a total game changer that could flip society on its head. If they can actually pull it off, life is going to get incredibly convenient. Down at the tracks, the officer confirms the train is loaded with fresh food. The general decides to keep it simple and use the new tech only for perishables, since it won't be fully ready for the invasion. Logistics is the real muscle behind a nation's power. One specific unit felt the weight of this insane organization more than anyone else. Enter the Infanglia Brigade, where even the elite soldiers are starting to feel the pressure of the perfect schedule. Checking her notes on horseback, Ria keeps track of the movement. Everything is mapped out to the second according to the army master plan. Looking back at the endless column of wagons, they are only 15 minutes away from the next rest stop. It is exhausting work, but the level of detail from headquarters is next level. Dainiru breaks down the math of the situation. A single army corps forms a massive snake of steel and wood that stretches for 30 kilometers. Even if you cut out the supply train, the line of troops still spans 20 kilometers. That is a full day of walking just to get from the back of the line to the front. Riding at the head of the column, Ria reflects on the total big brain strategy behind the king's deployment. Spreading the force into several columns keeps everyone fresh, so they are ready to fight the second they arrive. The supply lines stretch to the horizon in a massive crawl across the plains. It turns out that even a simple march is a total endurance test for both the horses and the people on foot. The scale of this operation is straight up insane, with a wooden highway carved right through the landscape. Detailed signposts are everywhere to keep the massive army from getting lost in the middle of nowhere. Ria is stunned to see how much work has gone into the route. The engineers have been working double time to widen and repair the roads so the heavy supply chain never grinds to a halt. Field officers are everywhere, making sure every hammer swing counts as they prep the infrastructure. Ria spots the major rest area right on schedule, proving headquarters has every single kilometer mapped out. The column pulls into a rest stop and finds a total oasis waiting for them. The soldiers are caught off guard when they see water troughs already filled and ready for their thirsty horses. Ria cracks a smile as she solves the mystery for her team. It was not a magic spring that saved them, but a massive supply of 20-liter cans brought in to keep the entire force hydrated. They even rolled out 750-liter tank wagons for the trip. Add in these 10-liter drinking containers and everyone is staying hydrated. Rest stops are set up at regular intervals, providing plenty of fresh water for the troops and their horses. Looking at the setup, Ria thinks it feels more like a giant picnic than an actual military march. The encampment outside the village is a sight to behold. All those wagons are being used as mobile warehouses to keep things moving. Our girl explains the system where older supplies get used first. Once a wagon is empty, it just gets sent back to be refilled. Every army corps has its own logistics unit, with 4,000 reserve wagons ready at the hubs. If things get tight, the capital just sends even more replacements. Vasily watches as the reality of this organization sinks in. This level of planning is beyond anything they ever imagined. Following protocol, the brigade HQ scores the comfy spot. They are assigned to sleep inside actual houses provided by the villagers. Not everyone gets a roof over their head, though. The village campers have to settle for sleeping under eaves or along the stone walls. Elsewhere, the massive bulk of the army sets up a tent city outside the village limits. These wild campers make up the largest group of the whole force. Everyone is on standby at this position until the big day. Once the invasion begins, they will push forward to the designated starting point. Dainiru checks the status of the supplies. Dinner is already being handed out to the hungry troops. Look at that high-quality military fuel. They are serving up a thick soup loaded with sausages and every vegetable they could find. Seasoned with rock salt and caraway, the smell is straight up heavenly. The glistening fat gives them that rich nourishment they need for the long march ahead. The troops are finally digging in, and the mood is surprisingly chill for an invasion force. Between the hot soup and fresh bread, it feels more like a late-night hangout than a military camp. One of the officers makes sure everyone has a full cup before the long night ahead. One bite of that soup, and she is basically transcending. It is so good she can feel the warmth hitting her soul. The attention to detail is insane, with every horse fed and every wagon ready to roll at a moment's notice. Dainiru realizes that if this is what a real military looks like, then her old nation was basically playing house. It is a major reality check on just how outclassed Elfine really was. Looking out over the endless ranks of the Orcsan army, she cannot help but think about what could have been. If they had been part of this nation from the start, they probably would have never been subjected to that massacre. Back at the headquarters, the vibe is light as the girls joke around by the fireplace. Vasily gets called out for being way too serious for the moment. They officially drop the past and embrace their new lives as citizens of the kingdom. The whole room is filled with laughter until someone bursts through the door with some major news. A whole shipment of barrels arrives as a direct gift from the king himself. The girls are losing their minds when they realize the big boss actually sent them a care package. Daineru is looking at the recipe like it is some high-level cheat code. They actually figured out how to mass-produce their sacred pigment using crushed stones and plant oils. This is the legendary war paint pigment that the Dark Elf clan has used for ages. Just a drop of water is all it takes to bring out the warrior spirit. Thinking back to their desperate escape, they had run out of these traditional supplies a long time ago. It was a heavy blow to their pride during the darkest chapter of their lives. The girls are losing it with joy now that they have the paint back. They can finally honor their ancestors and look the part of a true Dark Elf warrior. Looking at the scale of the operation, Daineru is just stunned by how much this country cares. Our boy Gustav really went the extra mile to make sure his new citizens were taken care of. She asks Vasily for the final count on the shipment while he checks the books. According to the latest reports, the haul is way bigger than any of them expected. The shipment is enough to fill 2 entire supply wagons. Daineru just smirks because she knows they have more than enough to go on a rampage. Daineru is locked in, already planning for a campaign that could last an entire year. With the sacred pigment back in her hands, she marks her face for the coming slaughter. The time for talk is over, and the raging maiden is finally ready to show the world what happens when her people stop holding back. That's it for today, guys. If you made it to the end, comment hell yeah, so I know you're real ones. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. Until then, keep on cooking.